A crash, like a linebacker colliding with the quarterback, woke me, and I shot straight up in bed. I blinked at the clock beside me, trying to make sense of the world. Red numbers glowed in the darkness. 3:23. It was 3:23 in the morning. Why was I awake at 3:23 in the morning? Had I dreamed the crashing sound? Cameron, my mother called from down the hall. Cameron, was that you? Are you all right? Thunder. No footsteps. Feet pounding down the hall. Someone was coming for me. Half-remembered childhood nightmare seized me, and I screamed backward across the bed in a panic, trying to get away from Voldemort, the Joker, the aliens, the demons. I fell on the floor with a thump. The bed covers coming with me. My legs were tangled in them. I couldn't kick free. And then they were there. Dark shapes surged into my room, black on black silhouettes with hulking shoulders and big round eyes that flashed. My fear made me 5 again. I curled up against the side of the bed like I was playing hide and seek with my older brother Darius, hoping he wouldn't see me. But the demons knew where I was. They homed in on me like guided missiles. Rough hands grabbed me, hauled me to my feet, threw me face first onto the bed. Somewhere, remotely, I heard my mother scream, heard my father cry out. The demons had come for them, too. Mom, Dad, I cried. I kicked and squirmed, trying to get away, but my arms were wrenched behind me and bound with a plastic zip tie that cut into my wrist. The hands pulled me up against, and I read the words on one of the captors' uniforms: Police, Homeland Security. Reality finally overrode my half awake nightmares. No, no, Darius is innocent, I cried. He's not a terrorist. You don't understand. They're making him do everything. The DHS agents wrangled a thick bag over my head, and the already dark room went completely black. No, please don't, I yelled. The black bag was closed, suffocating. My hot breath was damp on my face, and I started to panic. You can't do this. I was born in America. I'm an American citizen. The DHS agents ignored my protest. I kicked and thrashed as they dragged me from my room, down the hall, and out through the front door. A few days ago, all I had cared about was winning the homecoming game, getting into college, going on a date with Julia Gary, normal high school senior stuff. A few days ago, I had been king of the world. Now I was a prisoner of the United States of America. Chapter 1, a few days ago. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you East Phoenix High School's homecoming king and queen, Cameron Smith and Julia Gary. The crowd clapped and cheered, and Julia and I descended the steps to the dance floor. Julia clung to my arm like she was never going to let me go, and I grinned at her. I spied my best friend, Adam Collier, in the crowd. He gave me a deep, flourishing bow like some duke at court, and I laughed. Even though Adam and I had joked around about the homecoming dance, I had to admit that being crowned king, especially alongside Julia, felt pretty amazing. When Julia and I got to the middle of the dance floor for our spotlight dance, the DJ played the old Green Day song, Time of Your Life. I put my arms around Julia's waist, and she leaned into me, laying her head on my chest. I am, I told Julia, tucked a lock of blonde hair behind her ear, having the time of my life with you. I didn't even care if it sounded cheesy. I meant every word. Julia stood on her toes to kiss me, which made my head tingle like always. I love Julia. There, I said it. I maybe hadn't said it out loud to her yet, but she had to know it. Julia was smart, funny, and way cute. We'd been dating for 2 months, and I didn't know what we were going to do when I left Arizona for West Point next year, but this was definitely not the night to think about that. The DJ slid into a bouncing hip hop song, and kids streamed onto the dance floor, hopping and waving their arms. Adam and some of my other football teammates and their dates surrounded us, shouting their congratulations. Double congrats, Adam said, punching my arm. He glanced around at our teammates. Did y'all know there was a college scout at the game tonight? From the University of Colorado. Pac-12, that's big time, and Cameron put on a show for him. I shrugged and blushed. I hadn't told anybody else about the scout, not even Julia, because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I was committed to going to West Point and playing for Army anyway, but it had still made me play harder, knowing the scout was there in the stands. I had the best game of my high school career, scoring 3 touchdowns. I wouldn't have run for all those yards without the offensive line stepping up. I said, that last touchdown was me just following Antonio into the end zone. Adam scoffed. Dude, you're too modest. This guy's going to the Super Bowl one day, he told everybody. Yeah, I don't think so. No, I mean it, Adam said. He pulled out his phone and brought up a photo. Fanned out on a table were 4 oversized silver tickets, each with a picture of the Vince Lombardi trophy, a Super Bowl written across the top. We're going to the Super Bowl, amigo. If anything could make me stop dancing with Julia, it was that. I took the phone from Adam and stared at the screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He got them. This year's Super Bowl was going to be in Arizona, right across town in Glendale. Adam's dad was a big shot at a Phoenix bank, and he'd put in for some of the tickets the company got for being corporate sponsors, but Adam and I had never thought Mr. Collier would actually get them. Adam beamed. Yep, one for my dad, one for my mom, one for me, and one for you. I shook my head, still staring at the tickets. Beside me, Julia squeezed my arm. She knew how much I wanted this. But then I saw the price on one of the tickets, and my eyeballs almost popped out of my head. Each ticket was $700. I was looking at $2,800 worth of football tickets, way more if you considered what you could get for scalping them once the Super Bowl teams were settled. I handed the phone back, feeling sick to my stomach. I can't, I told Adam. It just about killed me to say it. But my dad was an assistant professor at Arizona State, and my mom worked at a horse ranch over in Apache Junction. There was no way I could afford a ticket to the Super Bowl. It's taken care of, bro, Adam said. Compliments to the family, Collier. Adam was an only child. I'd be like a brother to him most of my life, but still, no, I can't really, I said again. Will you get this idiot out of here before he says no to a free ticket to the Super Bowl again? Adam asked Julia. Gladly, she said. She pulled me over to the snack table, ladling punch into cups for each of us. We sipped our drinks, my mind still spinning from Adam's offer. You should totally go, Julia told me, a smile on her face. Don't feel guilty about it. I chuckled, grateful that she knew me so well. I put my arm around her and leaned down to kiss her again. Woo, yeah, kissy, kissy, an obnoxious voice yelled over the music. I turned around, thinking somebody was making fun of us, but it was a gang of senior boys giving an underclassman and his date a hard time. The kid who'd shouted was a senior named Jeremy Vaca, who'd had a few classes together over the years. He was the kind of guy who wore backward baseball caps and pants that sagged 3 inches below the waistline of his underwear. I'd always thought he was kind of a jerk, but he'd never bothered me, so I never paid much attention to him. Oh, God, Julia said, nodding toward the underclassmen. Seamus, Laurie, and Annie Henry. Who, the little guys? You know them? The girl Annie was petite and red-haired, wearing a modest white dress with a big pink bow on the back. Seamus was short and gangly, with a huge ball of curly brown hair that circled his head like a space helmet. He was exactly the type of guy who attracted bullies, and he hadn't helped matters by overdressing for the homecoming dance. He wore a powder blue tuxedo with a white ruffly shirt. They're in the fall play with me, Julia said. They're super sweet. Jeremy flicked a finger at Seamus' ruffled shirt. Nice tuxedo, weirdo. You two look like you're going to a dork wedding. You don't have to marry her, you know. Jeremy shoved Seamus aside. Can I cut in? He grabbed Annie around the waist, laughing in her face. Annie scowled and tried to twist away from Jeremy, but Seamus only stared helplessly at the ground. God, had I ever been that small? I couldn't watch anymore. I pulled away from Julia and pushed in between Jeremy and Annie. All right, Vaca, you've had your fun, I said. Why don't you leave them alone? Jeremy took a step back, looking at me like I was something his dog had barfed up on the carpet. And why don't you mind your own business? He said, towel head. Chapter 2. Time slowed to a stop, and it was like watching a football game on TV when they freeze frame the action to show you whether a guy's feet went out of bounds or not. All the other students around us stopped dancing. I'm sorry, I said. What did you just call me? Jeremy looked me in the eye. I called you a towel head, you towel head. I blinked. Adam appeared next to me, and we exchanged an incredulous glance. I was no 100-pound freshman Jeremy Vaca could push around. I was 5'8", 155 pounds, almost all of which was muscle. I could wipe the floor with this guy. I knew it. Adam knew it. Julia knew it. Everybody in the crowd gathering around us knew it. Even Jeremy knew it. So what made him think he could start calling me names and get away with it? What'd I ever do to you? I asked him. I really wanted to know. It's what you and your kind are doing to my country, camel jockey. Jeremy turned to his buddies, and they snickered. Adam launched himself at the guy, but I threw out an arm to hold him back. I pretended it didn't bother me, that I didn't care what some idiot like Jeremy thought, but the truth was, it hurt like a sucker punch to the stomach. I'd heard it all before, of course. Towelhead, camel jockey, sand monkey, raghead, and a couple worse ones I won't repeat. My dad's white, but my mom's Iranian. Me, I couldn't look more Middle Eastern, even though I was born right here in Phoenix. I've got thick black curly hair, heavy black eyebrows, and strong nose, olive skin. When I was 6 years old, there were these older kids on my block, Steve and Ben Hollis. One day, I went out to their house, and they started calling me names, like Jeremy here. I'd never heard those names before, and I had no idea what they meant. I don't think Steve and Ben did either, really. They'd probably just heard some adult somewhere ranting about people who look like me, and they were trying it out. But I knew the words were mean. I knew that they were insulting me, laughing at me. I ran home in tears. When Darius found out, he went over to their house and beat the snot out of them. He got in big trouble with my parents for doing it. I was grateful, but still kind of stunned. It was the first thing I'd realized how hard it was going to be growing up Persian American. To this day, that kind of name calling always hits me so suddenly, so hard. It makes me feel like I'm 6 again. Running home in tears to Darius every single time. Adam still wanted me to let him get at Jeremy, but I shook him off. I fought my own battles. Now, what's your problem? I asked Jeremy. Jeremy shouted so the crowd all around us could hear him over the music. My problem is that our homecoming king is the brother of a terrorist. I laughed out loud. Darius? A terrorist? Adam and the other guys around me chuckled too. You got the wrong guy, Vaca. My brother graduated from West Point, the United States Military Academy. Maybe you've heard of it. He's an Army Ranger. You know what you have to go through to become a ranger? Soldiers die training to be rangers. I felt the pride fill my chest as I thought of Darius. He's in Afghanistan right now with the 3rd Ranger Battalion, Special Ops, protecting your butt from terrorists. Kissing Tara's butt, more like. Jeremy said, maybe if you'd been home watching the news before the dance, not being a big sports ball hero, you would have heard your brother's a traitor to his country, a terrorist. Jeremy turned to his friends. Once an Arab, always an Arab, you know? I threw myself at him. I rammed Jeremy hard enough to drive him out into the middle of the dance floor, where a circle opened up for us like it had for my first dance with Julia. I punched Jeremy in the stomach, got a glancing blow in on his face, but he didn't go down. He wrapped an arm around my head and tried to punch me. All around us, people were yelling and cheering. The music was thumping. The colored lights were flashing. Jeremy's friends jumped me, pulling me away, punching and kicking me, and then Adam and the rest of the football team were there throwing punches, and the crowd was chanting, fight, 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 and I was punching back, hitting anything that moved, and then Mr. Philpott was there pulling us all apart, and Mr. Marks and Senor Serrano, and then it was over. Chapter 3. 10 minutes later, I sat outside the principal's office with Adam and a couple of my teammates. Julia had gone off in search of some more ice for my split lip, which was hurting really bad. Jeremy and his friends were inside the office now, getting chewed out so loud we could hear Mrs. DeRosa through the wall. Jeremy was definitely in trouble for saying the things he had, but we were all probably going to be suspended for fighting. I didn't care. It was worth it to defend Darius. He and I had a code of honor. We looked out for each other, no matter what, just like me and Adam. I nodded to my friend in silent thanks for sticking up for me, and he nodded back. Nothing more needed to be said. The door to the main office opened, and my stomach sank at the sight of a familiar face. Oh, man, I muttered. They called my mom. Mom was wearing her work clothes, blue jeans, yellow Western-style shirt, cowboy boots, white Stetson hat. I had the fleeting thought that Jeremy would no doubt be disappointed to learn my mother didn't wear a headscarf. I slumped down in my chair. I didn't need my mom to come pick me up from school, especially from the homecoming dance. What was I, 12? I was a senior in high school. I had my own car, for crying out loud. One of my teammates snickered, and I knew I was never going to live this down. Some homecoming king I was. There you are, Cameron John, Mom said. She used the Persian word for dear whenever she was worried about me or Darius. Listen, Mom, I can explain, I said, trying to head things off before she blew up at me. Mom frowned at my bruised face. Cameron, have you been fighting? It's not his fault, Mrs. Smith, Adam said. This idiot was saying really stupid stuff about him and Darius. Mom looked up sharply at the mention of Darius's name. You didn't know I'd been in a fight. The school didn't call you? I asked. Something was wrong here. Something big. Suddenly, I realized Mom wouldn't usually be in her work clothes this late at night. She would have changed to come with Dad and watch me in the football game, and now that I thought about it, I hadn't seen them at the game at all. I'd been so focused on the scout, I hadn't looked for my parents in the stands. Had they even been there? They never missed a game. But if they weren't at the game, where were they? Jeremy's sneering voice came back to me. Maybe if you'd been home watching the news before the dance, not being a big sports ball hero, you would have heard your brother's a traitor to his country. My head spun. I felt like my whole body was sinking right through the seat of my chair, the floor swallowing me up. Mom, I said. Mom, what's going on? Mom looked like she was about to cry, and then I realized she had been crying. Cameron, you have to come home right away, she said. It's your brother. Chapter 4. Mom gripped the steering wheel of her Suburban so hard I thought it was going to snap off in her hands. We left my car at the school so I could ride home with her. She'd already spoken to Mrs. DeRosa, though I had no idea about what. I didn't know anything. Mom, what is it? What's going on? I demanded. Is Darius okay? My greatest fear was that Darius was hurt, or worse. A light turned red ahead of us, and Mom stopped the car so suddenly I was thrown against my seatbelt. There's this report on the news, Mom said at last, an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, and there's someone in the video, someone who looks like your brother. What, defending the embassy? None of this made any sense. Darius wasn't assigned to an embassy. He was deployed in Afghanistan. No, Mom said, attacking it. What? I felt a jolt of shock. But no, it's not Darius. It can't be. This is crazy. Why would he attack a U.S. embassy? How could he be in Turkey? I don't know, Mom said. The light turned green and she gunned the car, throwing me back against the seat. Someone from the paper called us while we were getting ready to come to the game. We had no idea what they were talking about. The Estelas across the street called and told us to turn on the news. That's when we saw the video. Is it him? I asked. It can't Can't be him. I don't know, Mom said again. She's still squeezing the steering wheel. It's hard to tell. What does the army say? They have to know if he's in Turkey, right? We haven't heard from them. Your father's been trying to call them. This is nuts, I said. I wished for the millionth time that my parents had bought me a smartphone, but all I had was a flip phone that could barely text. Same with Mom. I turned on the radio instead, surfing for something, anything about Darius. It was all just pop stations until I flipped over to the AM dial and found a political shock jock ranting about it. So this soldier, no, that's not fair to real American soldiers. The guy was saying, this man, this Muslim who goes to West Point and learns everything America has to teach him about tactics and military history and advanced warfare, then gets himself sent to Afghanistan so he can go AWOL and share everything he knows with Al Qaeda. So I guess that's what the U.S. Army does now, train Islamic extremists how to fight and then pay their way overseas so they can become terrorists. Our first problem here is allowing Muslims to join the army. Turn it off, Mom said, but turn it off. I punched the radio off and sat back in my seat with a huff. The guy was full of it, but I wanted to hear any news I could about Darius. The idea that Darius went to West Point so he could learn all kinds of stuff for Al Qaeda was ridiculous. As I stared out the window, I remembered that day, almost 7 years ago now, when we'd gotten up at the crack of dawn to drive Darius to his first day at the United States Military Academy. The four of us, me, Darius, Mom, and Dad, had stayed overnight at a motel just outside West Point, New York, after flying in the day before. I was still jet-lagged and could hardly drag myself out of bed. But Darius looked like he'd been up all night. He was so excited and so nervous he couldn't eat a thing at breakfast, and he hardly said 2 words to us on the drive over. We filed into Eisenhower Hall, where an older cadet told us about how hard the next 7 weeks of cadet basic training were going to be. Beast barracks, he called it. I looked up at Darius. He sat hunched over in his seat, his arms folded across his stomach like the time when he was trying not to be sick on a roller coaster at Castles and Coasters. Are you going to puke? I whispered. No, shut up, he told me, but he sure looked like he was going to puke. I scooted a little closer to Mom. The cadet checked his watch. You now have 90 seconds to say goodbye to your loved ones, he announced. There were gasps and cries of alarm, and mine was one of them. I knew why we were there, of course. Darius was going off to college, a very special kind of college where we wouldn't see him again until he got leave at Christmas. But the reality hadn't set in until that moment. When they told us we only had a minute and a half to say goodbye, Darius had been my constant companion, my sometimes playmate, sometimes confidant, sometimes adversary, and full-time best friend, and now he was going away forever, or close enough to forever. Little kid that I was, I burst into tears. Mom was in tears as well, hugging Darius, and I shamelessly threw my arms around him too. I sobbed and wouldn't let him go, even when older cadets started calling for the newbies to come away with them. Hey, you're going to be okay, Darius told me, hugging me back. Don't go, I told him. I don't want you to go. I'll see you again soon, he promised, and when I do, I'll be a real soldier. I don't want you to be a real soldier. I want you to stay at home with me. The older cadets called out again. I have to go, Cameron, Darius said, pulling away. You have to be the strongest of the strong, the bravest of the brave. You can do that, can't you? I shook my head, still sobbing. Yes, you can, Darius said. I know you can. Darius gave Mom and Dad one last hug and hurried off, wiping at his eyes. I watched him until he disappeared down a hallway with 1,000 or so other new cadets. The rest of the day was dreadfully boring for a 5th grader. Speeches from officers and a tour of the academy, lunch in the cafeteria. I walked around feeling like a hollow shell of myself, as if the best, most important part of me had been scooped out with a spoon. We saw Darius again that day, only once, at the oath ceremony. We sat in the bleachers while the new cadets marched across the quad to the trumpets and drums of a military band. Every family straining to find their son or daughter in the ranks. We didn't have to stretch to see Darius, though. He was right there in the first row. At least I was pretty sure it was Darius. While we'd been wandering around the academy grounds, Darius had gone through a transformation. His shoulder-length, curly black hair was replaced by a severe crew cut that made him look like almost bald, and gone, too, were his jeans, t-shirt, and sneakers, replaced with a white button-down short-sleeved shirt, black shoes, and gray pants with a thick black line down the sides. Darius and the other new cadets stopped with parade ground precision, then repeated the military academy's oath back to a senior officer. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and bear true allegiance to the national government, that I will maintain and defend the sovereignty of the United States, paramount to any and all allegiance, sovereignty, or fealty I may owe to any state or country whatsoever. Seeing Darius there reciting the oath, head shaved, face serious, so proud that he was practically about to pop a button on his new Army issue shirt, everything changed for me. All day I had wished he would come back home with us, but right there in that moment I understood why he would leave sunny Arizona and fly across the country to this cold, gray place, why he would abandon his friends, his family, me. Darius was going to be a part of something much greater than himself. something with tradition, with meaning, an extension of everything Mom had taught us about being Persian. Darius was joining a new family. He was going to be a United States soldier. That was the day I decided I was going to go to West Point and be a soldier too. He swore an oath, I said, my forehead against the car window. What? Mom asked. Darius swore an oath to defend the United States. I said he wouldn't go back on that. Mom turned onto our street and pulled up short. An army of local TV trucks and camera crews were parked outside our house waiting for us. Chapter 5. Have you heard from Darius? What has the army told you? Is Darius a traitor? Reporters with microphones and cameras swarmed our car, yelling questions through the window. Are you Muslims? Is Darius a Muslim? Have you seen the footage yet? Is it Darius? Mom honked and gunned the engine, and the reporters jumped out of the way as she sped into the driveway. Go straight inside, Mom told me. Don't say anything to them. Don't even look at them. Butterflies filled my chest and my pulse quickened. Mom pulled the keys out of the ignition, and I leapt out of the car and ran for the front door. Cameron, wait, someone yelled. Tell us about your brother. I kept my head down and kept running. Stay off our property, Mom yelled at the reporter. She hurried inside after me, slamming the door. Dad had the TV on CNN watching the news coverage. He stood when we came in, going immediately to Mom to give her a hug. I went right to the TV. Headlines scrolled across the bottom of the screen, but they were on a commercial break. I never watched CNN. I didn't even know what channel it was on. The only news I ever watched was sports news on ESPN. What are they saying? I asked. What's going on? Nothing new, Dad said. It might be Darius. It might just be someone wearing his uniform. Dad and I shared a glance. The only way someone else could be wearing Darius's uniform was if they had taken it off him, which meant Darius was captured or dead. So either Darius was now a terrorist or he was captured or dead. I didn't know which was worse. Welcome back, said CNN's Wolf Blitzer. He stood in front of a bank of huge televisions, all showing different videos of gunfire and explosions around a sandstone white building flying the U.S. flag. We return now to the attack on the United States Embassy in Turkey, where 53 people are known to be dead, including 22 civilians. And most disturbing of all, leading the attack appears to be U.S. Army Ranger Captain Darius Smith, or perhaps not. With me now is the former director of the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, Trip Conrad. Mr. Conrad, CNN put a picture of Darius up on the screen and posed a photograph of him in his uniform, looking as handsome and serious as ever. Then they split the screen and showed a still from a video taken in the embassy. In the background, a guy stood waving his finger in the air. He was the same height as Darius, but I couldn't make out his face. It was surreal listening to Wolf Blitzer talk about my brother, saying where he grew up, what his grades were like at West Point, going over his acceptance into the Army Rangers, his assignments in the Middle East. It was weird, as if Emily Reed, my favorite correspondent on ESPN, and not just because she happened to be so pretty, had been talking about my performance in the homecoming game on SportsCenter. The house phone rang. I reached for it, but Dad waved me away and answered it himself. Hello? No, we have no comment at this time. Please don't call again. He clicked off the phone and tossed it on the couch. They won't stop calling, but I have to keep answering in case it's the Army. Mr. Conrad, I'm going to have to stop you there, Wolf Blitzer said on TV. I'm told we have a startling new video just released by Al-Qaeda that definitively includes U.S. Army Captain Darius Smith. Let's bring you that video now. Mom and Dad and I huddled around the television set as Darius appeared, seated behind a desk in front of a black curtain. A wave of shock hit me. It was Darius, my brother. But just like that first day at West Point when he'd appeared transformed, now he was transformed all over again. Darius was still wearing his army fatigues, but he'd grown a scraggly little beard and wore a white headscarf around his curly hair. Mom let out a gasp, and Dad put his arm around her. I felt the room start to spin all over again. My name is Darius Smith, Darius told the camera, and I take full responsibility for today's Al-Qaeda attack on the U.S. Embassy in Turkey. My mother sobbed once, and my father closed his eyes. I shook my head, silently pleading with Darius not to say this, not to do this, but he kept going. I was once asked to commit atrocities against the Muslim people by the United States government, Darius said, reading from a piece of paper. I now chose to lead these same innocent victims in the fight against American tyranny. Today's strike on the U.S. Embassy is merely the first in a series of planned attacks against the United States to punish the infidels for their crimes against Islam. Once, when we were little, Darius and I were watching a movie about aliens, and I was scared. I covered my eyes and told Darius to tell me when the things were off the screen. I waited, terrified that if I peeked through my fingers, I'd see one and have nightmares for weeks. Finally, Darius told me it was all right to look. The aliens were still there. I'd screamed, and Darius had laughed and laughed. He'd done it on purpose, just to mess with me. I was so mad, I grabbed one of the sofa cushions to beat him over the head. But then I got so scared, I hid behind it instead. I felt like that now. I couldn't decide whether I was more frightened or mad. I started trembling. No, no, I yelled at the Darius on TV. The tie I'd worn to the dance felt like it was suffocating me, and I tore it off and threw it on the floor. Darius kept talking about infidels, jihad, martyrs, Al Qaeda, but I wasn't listening anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own blood thumping in my ears, my breath coming short and fast, my mother crying quietly beside me. Whatever else Darius had to say didn't matter anyway. All that mattered now was that our lives were never, ever going to be the same. Chapter 6. For the first time since kindergarten, I was officially afraid to go to school. I stood at the bottom of the steps that led to the front doors of my high school, letting the other students flow around me. A few of them didn't know who I was, freshmen, mostly kids, who didn't care about football or homecoming or any of that stuff, kids whose parents didn't watch the news. The rest of them knew exactly who I was and all about what Darius had done, or said he had done. I hadn't slept at all. Friday night, going over the video of Darius in my mind, the more I'd thought about it, the more I'd realized that Darius's speech was textbook terrorist screed, which is why I was sure it was written for him by somebody else, somebody who made him read it, or brainwashed him into reading it. There was no way Darius had willingly abandoned the army to join Al Qaeda. I was sure of it. Even if he cared much about Islam, and our family had never been religious at all. Persians were Shia Muslims. Al Qaeda were Sunni Muslims. There's no way he would want to join Al Qaeda, and there's no way Al Qaeda would let him. I tried to tell my parents my theory, but they'd been too numbed by shock and sadness to listen. And that first video of Darius had been followed by another on Saturday, and another on Sunday. Darius training Al Qaeda troops, Darius calling on American Muslims to take up arms against their country. With each new video, the case against him mounted. And from the looks the other students were giving me on Monday morning, he'd already been found guilty, and I was guilty by association. My hands clenched into fists. My heart raced. My face got hot, and flood of emotion overcame me. A mishmash of feelings I thought I'd already dealt with during the roller coaster of a weekend. I wanted to run away and hide. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to punch somebody. What I didn't want to do was climb those steps to school, but I did. I was not going to let those looks stop me from living my life. Inside, it was worse. The crowd in the hall parted from me like they were a stream of water, and I was a drop of oil. Conversation stopped, eyes followed me, silence stalked me. I'd been stared at like this before, but never so blatantly. It happened sometimes when I was out in public, someplace where nobody knew who I was. I'd been with Darius at Metro Center Mall, and people, adults mostly, would give us these side glances. They'd look us up and down, suspicious in their eyes. They didn't think we noticed, but we did. I did, at least. More than seeing it, I could feel it. Feel the way people watched me as I browsed the game store and stood in line at Orange Julius. As soon as I got comfortable, as soon as I forgot that I happened to have the same nose and skin and hair as some monster who'd once hijacked a plane, a suspicious glance would remind me all over again. These people had no idea I'd grown up in a suburb of Phoenix, like any other American kid, playing Xbox and eating Cheetos, or they didn't care. They feared me, hated me, just because my skin was brown. But I had never been that way at my school. This was my turf, my kingdom. Just the short walk to my locker twisted my guts into a tangle of spaghetti. I didn't know how I was going to survive a whole day of this. I looked for Adam. He'd texted me a little over the weekend. Stuff like, hey, you okay? But mostly he had given me a space while my family and I dealt with each new horror that appeared on CNN. The one person I hadn't been able to talk to was Julia, and when I spotted her down the hall, surrounded by her girlfriends, I practically ran over to her. If I needed anybody's support now, it was hers. Hey, Julia, I called. Julia's friends gave her a quick glance and then peeled off. I leaned down to kiss her, and she turned away, making me kiss her cheek instead of her lips. I frowned. I tried calling you and texting you all weekend, I said, fighting down a pang of worry. I was busy with the play, she said, still not looking at me. Something was definitely up. Could it be about Darius? But Julia knew me. She knew Darius. I pushed on, trying to make things right by ignoring the tension between us. How'd rehearsals go? Fine, Julia said. Did you get that one scene right? The one you'd been working on? Yes, she said. And then I have to go get to homeroom. Julia, wait, I said, catching up with her before she could run off. What's going on? She looked up at me at last, her lips thin, her blue eyes filled with hurt and sorrow, but there was something else in her expression. Fear. I staggered back as startled as if she'd slapped me. Julia, please don't call me any more for a little while, she said, her voice small, the opposite of her usual confident tone. Are you breaking up with me? I asked. I blinked, feeling lightheaded. You can't break up with me. I said, I love you. Julia swallowed a sob and turned away and hand to her mouth. Julia, I called, my voice cracking, but she was gone. I realized suddenly that we'd had an audience, a bunch of kids who'd been pretending not to watch the homecoming queen dump the king. My face was hot with embarrassment as tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't let them see me cry, too. I pushed through the gawkers into the boys' bathroom and huddled over the sink. I wiped away a tear with the back of my hand. My chest burned like my heart had been ripped out. I didn't know how to handle this. I'd never been dumped before. I'd never told a girl I loved her before. Now both had happened on the same day. Out in the hall, the bell rang. I was going to be late to homeroom, but I didn't care. I ran the water and splashed some on my face, trying to hide the tear stains. I wanted to crawl into a corner and fold in on myself until I disappeared. Julia had broken up with me, but what really haunted me was that look in her eyes. Julia was afraid of me. I looked in the mirror, trying to see what she had seen there, trying to see the monster everybody else saw, the terrorist, but all I saw was me. Chapter 7. 22, 22. Blue, 17, Francisco called. I stood behind him, watching the defense shift. We were an hour and a half into another grueling practice. The air was dry and dusty, and the Arizona sun was blazing. Even though it was November, sweat poured down my face inside my helmet. This was hard, but it was nothing compared to what I'd been through at school that day. The glances, the whispers, the fear. Julia's face came back to me again. That look that squeezed my heart and wrenched my gut. It was a look I'd seen all day in the faces of my classmates, all except Adam, who'd been the only one to talk to me. To sit with me at lunch, everyone else seemed to believe that I was some radical Islamic terrorist. I didn't have anything against Islam. My mom's younger brother, my uncle Rahim, he was more religious than my mom was. He took me and Darius to a mosque when we were little, and I remember the men on their prayer mats bowing and muttering their prayers, but my family wasn't religious. We celebrated Christmas, not Ramadan, but mostly because we liked giving each other presents. We didn't go to any church, Christian or Muslim. But nobody cared about facts. They'd already decided I was Muslim and that I was going to turn on America, just like my brother had. I steamed underneath my football helmet. I had 7 more months left until graduation, and then I would be off to West Point, and they would never have to see my Arab face ever again. I shook my head. Persians weren't even Arabs. They were 2 different things. But like I said, nobody cared about facts. Set hut, Francisco called. The ball snapped. Francisco dropped back to pass. I blinked, tried to remember where I was, what I was supposed to be doing. I stepped up a second too late to block. Wham! Omar, the linebacker, absolutely plastered me, knocking me off my feet. It took me a few seconds to get my wind back and sit up. By that time, Francisco had already thrown the ball downfield and the play was over. I shook my head, trying to see straight again. That knock from Omar had been a cold reboot to my system. We weren't supposed to hit that hard in practice, but I knew it was more my fault than Omar's. My mind was everywhere else but here. Wolf Blitzer's face on TV, Julia's face in the school hallway, Darius's face reading a terrorist screed halfway around the world. Coach Reynolds blew his whistle, and I pulled myself to my feet. Nobody offered to help me up. Smith, Coach shouted at me. No doubts, no second guesses, no distractions, right? Easy for him to say. I nodded to let him know I'd gotten the message and came back to the huddle. Fine, I thought, half listening as Francisco called the next play. School was going to be tough. Practice was going to be tough. Life was going to be tough from here on out. But I could be tough too. I'd been tough all my life. I'd had to be. To keep up with Darius, he was 8 years older than me, and 8 years is a long time in kid years. He was a giant to me. We'd played together a lot, the way brothers do, but there were other kids Darius's age in the neighborhood, and he liked playing with them too. Especially football. I was way smaller than Darius and all his friends, and they never wanted me in their games. Go home, Cameron, Darius told me one day when they were picking teams. I want to play too, I whined. You can watch from the tree, he said. I don't want to watch, I want to play. You're too little. I am not. I started to cry and pitch a fit. If you don't let me play, I'll tell Mom and Dad. The other kids rolled their eyes and begged Darius to come on and start playing, but I turned the crying up to 11. Darius huffed and dragged me away by the arm. Stop being a baby, he told me when we were away from the other boys. I'm not a baby, I protested. Then stop acting like one. I sniffled and dragged the back of my hand across my nose. I want to play. You're too little, Cameron. I don't care. Darius huffed again. Okay, fine. You want to play? You can play. But if you get knocked down, you can't cry. You don't get the ball, you can't whine. You get scraped up, you walk it off. You understand? If you're going to play with the big kids, you can't be a baby. You have to be tough. The strongest of the strong, I told him, still sniffling. The bravest of the brave. He frowned like he didn't think I could do it, which only made me want to show him all the more. To prove I could be tough enough. That day, everything happened that Darius said would happen. I got knocked down, scraped up, and I never once got the ball. But I did what I promised. I bit back tears. I kept my mouth shut. I wiped off the blood and kept playing. And the next day, I came back, and the next day, and the next day, and pretty soon they were giving me the ball, really including me in plays. Then one day, I wasn't the last picked for a team. Those games with the big kids were how I got to be so good at football. Those games had made me better, tougher, and I was going to need that toughness now, every last bit of it. The center hiked the ball. Francisco dropped back. Omar came right at me. This time I was ready. I met him with my shoulder, knocking him away. He bounced back at me, pushing, shoving. I could barely get an arm in to block him. He bumped me, rammed me, elbowed me. It was like he wasn't even trying to get past me. He was just roughing me up like the big kids had done to me that first game back in the neighborhood. I felt all the frustration of the whole day wash over me, and I lost it. The whistle blew, and I got right in Omar's face, ready to fight. Chapter 8. What's your problem? I yelled. Omar shrugged like he hadn't done anything wrong. I shoved him and he shoved me back. I swung a fist at him, trying to score a hit around his pads, and soon we were punching and kicking at each other. Coach Reynolds ran over, blowing his whistle, and pulled us apart. Enough, enough, he told us. What's going on here? He went crazy, Omar said. He started shoving me, and then he took a swing at me. Because you attacked me, I said. I threw myself at Omar again, but Adam grabbed me and held me back. You, Coach Reynolds told me, go cool off. The rest of you line up again. I kept trying to get at Omar, but Adam spun me away. Hey, hey, he said. Cameron, hey, listen to me. Omar was just rushing the passer. I blinked. I was still breathing hard, my rage making fists in my hands. I twisted to look over Adam's shoulder to see if Omar and his buddies were talking about me. Adam tugged my helmet back around. Cameron, he was just doing the same thing he always does. I saw him. Let it go, Adam said. Don't be so sensitive. I turned on Adam. He was tall and gangly, his Adam's apple sticking out beneath the chin strap of his helmet. Don't be so sensitive, I said, my voice rising. Maybe you didn't notice the way everybody treated me today, like I had a bomb strapped to my chest. Adam was quiet. All day, we'd studiously avoided the subject of Darius, talking about stuff like the Super Bowl and math homework instead, but I couldn't pretend to ignore the truth anymore. People hated me, feared me. Look, Cameron, Adam finally said, you can't blame people for reacting like that. I can't, not even my teammates, not even my girlfriend. They think Darius is a terrorist. They think I'm a terrorist. That part's stupid, Adam admitted, but Cameron, you have to understand how everybody else sees your brother. He basically went on TV and said I'm a terrorist. But he's not. He can't be. You know that. We've been friends since third grade. You know Darius. I thought I did, Adam said quietly. His words hurt worse than anything Omar had done. I shoved Adam in the shoulder pads, making him stumble. Take it back, I told him. He shoved me hard, and we faced off, and clocks ticked from throwing punches like Omar and I had. Darius isn't a terrorist, I told Adam, my voice low. Who are you trying to convince, me or you? Adam shot back. That one hit too close to home. All the doubts I'd been fighting crowded into my head, and my face burned with guilt and shame under my helmet. I pushed Adam away. You know what? Keep the Super Bowl ticket. You can take Omar, or better yet, take Julia. I hear she's free. Cameron, Adam called, but I was already on my way to the locker room. I was done. Coach Reynolds would be mad at me, probably bench me for the start of the next game, but I would deal with that later. Right then, I just wanted to get out of there, go home, and disappear into my room and never come out again. I slammed my helmet on its shelf and yanked off my pads, and all my life, no matter where I'd been or what else was happening, the football field had been sacred ground. When I put that helmet on, I wasn't a terrorist or whatever else people secretly thought of me. I was Smith, number 13, running back. I was part of a team, judged only on my efforts and accomplishments. People cheered for me on the football field, held up signs encouraging me on. Now I felt like even this last place of refuge was gone. I showered, changed, and got out of there before anyone came back to the locker room. I didn't want to see anybody, especially not Adam. He and I had been best friends since elementary school, and he'd known Darius the entire time. Darius used to throw the football for us in the backyard. He used to play video games with me and Adam after school. If Adam didn't believe in Darius, we couldn't be friends anymore. First Julia, now Adam, I was totally on my own. When I drove up to my house, I wasn't surprised to see the row of TV vans up and down my street, but there was something else there too, something new. A black armored car with Homeland Security written on the side was parked in my front yard. It looked like something from Darius's pictures from Afghanistan, a tank on wheels, and all around it were white delivery vans marked DHS, a big black SUVs with flashing red and blue lights. The Department of Homeland Security had come to visit. Chapter 9. People in business suits and white zip-up hazmat gear moved in and out of my house. I couldn't get anywhere else close to my own driveway, so I parked down the street and walked up. A policeman stopped me at a barricade. I live here, I told him. He told me to wait while he radioed it in. I felt a bead of sweat roll down the center of my back. My pulse quickened and my breath came short. If you'd hooked me up to a lie detector right then, I couldn't even have said my name was Cameron Smith without the needle jiggling all over the place. I felt like a criminal, and I hadn't even done anything. Across the street, the Estella kids stared at me from their driveway. 2 government agents in suits came out. They asked me to unzip my gym bag and my book bag so they could look inside with flashlights. What's going on? I demanded, but they didn't answer. Why wouldn't anybody tell me anything? Why did I have to be searched before I could even go inside my own house? When they were sure my American history textbook wasn't a bomb, the 2 agents walked me inside. Mom and Dad stood in the living room talking to 2 more agents in suits while the astronaut-looking hazmat people took apart the kitchen. What's going on? I asked again. They're searching the house, Dad told me. For what? I looked down the hall. There were hazmat guys in my room, going through my stuff. Wait, you can't do that, I said, heading down the hall. An armed policeman stopped me and corralled me back with my parents. I assure you, we can, said one of the agents. She was a large white woman in a gray skirt and jacket. Her partner, an African American guy in an almost matching gray suit, showed me his DHS badge. We're from the Department of Homeland Security. The woman said, Yeah, I saw your tank parked on the lawn. Cameron, Mom said, What? It's like Operation New Dawn out here? I said, What do you know about Operation New Dawn? The male agent asked me. I know my brother Darius was taking a part in it as a U.S. Army Ranger until he was captured and brainwashed by Al Qaeda. Cameron, don't. Dad said, Dad, they're taking our hearts apart like we're terrorists. We're American citizens. We've been authorized to conduct a search of these premises, the woman said. A similar search has already been conducted at your brother's apartment near Fort Benning. We'll be wanting to talk each of you individually at first and then together. Darius isn't a terrorist, I yelled. All the hazmat people stopped and turned to look at me, but nobody said a word. It was creepy. I took a step back. I'm telling you, he's not. Cameron, don't make this worse than it already is, Dad said. Worse? Worse? How could it be worse? Cameron, just do what your father says and have a seat on the couch, said the woman. I don't want to sit on the couch, I said. It wasn't a suggestion, the woman told me. I clenched my teeth, my face hot. Who was a stranger to tell me what to do? Mom put a hand on my arm. Cameron, sit with me. Mom had always been able to calm me down when I got like this. When I wanted to argue and fight, I let her pull me to the couch, and the woman from the DHS went away. The guards in black SWAT uniforms stayed. I watched as a DHS agent went through our DVDs in the living room, like there might be something hidden inside the Iron Man case. Down the hall, I heard somebody taking the lid off the toilet in the bathroom I'd once shared with Darius. My stomach clenched, and I fought the urge to yell again. This wasn't fair. None of it. Mom and Dad and I hadn't done anything wrong, and we were just supposed to sit here and take it. Like I was supposed to just take the stares of my fellow students, the betrayals of my friends. I shook with rage. I hated the DHS. I hated the press. I hated the people at the mall, the kids at school. I hated my mom and dad for sitting by. I hated Adam and Julia for turning on me. I hated Darius for doing this to me. Darius. All the tension went out of my arms and legs like when you get off a roller coaster and can't walk right for the next few minutes. It was true. I hated Darius. It was Darius's fault all this was happening. It was Darius's fault my life was ruined. The agents came back over to where Mom and Dad and I were sitting, and they questioned us. Had Darius ever expressed anger at the United States government? Had he ever expressed sympathy toward Al Qaeda? Had he shown unusual interest in Sunni Islam and Sharia law? Who were his friends, his acquaintances? Had we heard from him in the last few weeks? Letters, phone calls, emails? Mom and Dad answered most of the questions, but when the agents looked to me, I answered robotically, keeping my anger at Darius buried deep inside. When it was clear they weren't going to get anything else from us, everyone departed, leaving behind more TV camera crews and an overturned house. Mom and Dad went to work silently, cleaning up the living room and kitchen. I went down the hall to see what they'd done to my room. Chapter 10. I walked into a wreck. My clothing drawers had been rifled through, my comic books were all pulled out, my bed sheets removed, the mattress flipped, everything in my desk drawers had been dumped out. They had gone through every book on my shelves, every bag of football equipment, every CD and DVD case. The posters on my walls had all been taken down, my closet emptied. Homeland Security had left no pile of dirty clothes unturned. I lay down on my stripped bed, trying not to cry. It felt like thieves had broken into our house, like my belongings weren't really mine anymore, and they weren't. Not if the DHS could come in anytime they wanted to and mess with everything. As much as I hated him right then, I wish Darius were there. He was the person I'd always turn to when bad things happened, even before Adam. Darius had always given the best advice, but you never told me what to do when you were the problem, Darius. I rapped on the wall between my room and Darius's room with my knuckle, using the old signals we'd used as kids to communicate with each other when we were supposed to be asleep. A certain series of knocks from Darius meant Mom and Dad were watching TV, so it was safe for me to come to his room. I'd sneak over, and Darius would invent stories for me using his G.I. Joe action figures as stand-ins for Rostam and Siavash heroes from Persian mythology. Come over, I tapped. Come over. Come back, Darius. I need you. I knew, of course, that my brother wasn't going to answer. I got up and went next door to his room. Homeland Security had gone through it, too. Of course, it didn't look as bad. Darius had moved out when he graduated from West Point, so there wasn't as much to mess up. Still, I put all his school trophies and medals and pictures back in place, rearranged all his model tanks and airplanes the way he liked them, and then I found the code. It was buried under some of the things they dumped out of his desk, a piece of loose-leaf notebook paper with Darius's 13-year-old scroll on it, mounted on a faded sheet of blue construction paper. The Code of Honor is set at the top, and underneath were written the 7 rules were thought all heroes should live by. 1. Be the strongest of the strong. 2. Be the bravest of the brave. 3. Help the helpless. 4. Always tell the truth. 5. Be loyal. 6. Never give up. 7. Kill all monsters. We were big on killing monsters. Darius and I had solemnly signed the bottom of the paper in our grade school cursive. If we could have signed it in blood, we would have. I read the code again. It was just kid stuff, but Darius and I had played by the code for so long that we knew it by heart. We'd lived it, believed it in it so much that it had become part of us. Like those people who grew up and list Jedi on census forms where it asked what religion they are. Our code of honor had been a kind of faith. I knew Darius would rather die than break it. This was Darius, here on this piece of paper in these neat and orderly shelves, not the shabby, disheveled nutcase ranting on TV. A wave of guilt pushed me down into the chair at Darius's desk. I'd let myself hate Darius, I realized, because deep down, despite all my protests, a small dark part of me had believed he really was a traitor. It felt sick to my stomach. How could I have ever thought that Darius I knew, the Darius I grew up with, could be that person? I remembered being 5 years old. Darius was 13. We were on the trails outside the horse ranch where Mom worked, in the shadow of a superstition mountain. Just look at them, Sayavash, Darius called to me. They've all been affected. I peek out through a patch of desert and verbena. The only thing in the dry creek bed below us was a lumpy brown toad sunning itself on a rock, but in my mind's eye, I was looking down at millions of zombies staggering around the streets at downtown Phoenix. What do we do, roast 'em? I asked, dead serious. This was our never-ending game. Darius pretended to be Rostam, and I was always his protege, Sayavash. Mom had read us stories about the heroes, but Darius and I loved making up our own adventures, crazy mashups of the old Persian legends. And whatever movies and books and cartoons we were into at the time, we must be the strongest of the strong, the bravest of the brave, Darius told me, and we must kill all monsters. Rakesh, the horse we'd ridden on from the ranch, stretched out over us to nibble at the verbena. But how? There's so many of them, I said. Darius pulled one of those cheap plastic troll dolls with fuzzy hair out of his pocket. With this, he said with equal seriousness, it's a magic troll statue. It turns all zombies back into real people. All we have to do is get this to the top of the chase tower before any of the zombies eat our brains. He turned and got ready to run down into the valley. Are you ready, Sayavesh? Darius said, it's you and me against the world. It's you and me against the world, I thought, staring down at the blue piece of construction paper in Darius's room. I couldn't doubt Darius, couldn't be mad at him, not when everybody else in the world thought he was guilty. He needed at least one ally in this, one person who still believed in his innocence, and that had to be me. But what do I do, Rostam? The answers were staring me in the face. Be strong, be brave, be loyal, never give up. I knew that exactly what I was going to do. I was going to clear Darius's name. Chapter 11. I went straight to my desk and pushed all the junk the DHS had dumped on and into my floor. My laptop was underneath. I was going to start by watching all the videos Darius had made. The networks never showed every minute of them. All they cared about were the juicy parts, the parts where Darius said stuff they could turn into sound bites. I wanted to see each video in its entirety. Maybe there was something I could use to prove Darius was innocent. Out of habit, I first clicked the bookmark to see the status of my West Point application. It took forever to apply for the United States Military Academy. You started halfway through your junior year, testing questionnaires, summer leadership seminar, candidate fitness assessments, nomination, applications, transcripts, all that had to be done before you could officially apply. Then more letters, more fitness assessments, medical exams, more transcripts, school evaluations, and then if you'd done everything right, if you passed all the tests and interviews and had all the right grades, then maybe you'd be one of the 1,000 people accepted out of the 50,000 who applied. I'd been building my application for a year now, and every time I got on my computer, I compulsively clicked to the web page where West Point marked all the steps as green or red, depending on what had or hadn't been completed. Mine should have been almost all green. I was in the home stretch now, just a few things left I couldn't do until January anyway. But right there in the middle of all of the green things I had already done was a red X that hadn't been there before. Every candidate for West Point had to have an official nomination from their representative in Congress, one of their 2 senators or the Vice President of the United States. I had already been nominated by my U.S. Representative, Catherine Barnes, but now that green check had turned into a red X. I clicked on the link to find out why. All it said was nomination withdrawn. It was suddenly hard to breathe. I got up and paced my room, my arms shaking, my eyes unable to focus on anything. Months of letters, interviews, fitness tests, and academic exams, 7 years of hopes and dreams, and it was all gone. Darius goes on TV claiming responsibility for the attack on a U.S. embassy, and my nomination letter to West Point is withdrawn. Boom, just like that. Representative Barnes had probably set some sort of speed record rescinding her letter once she realized who I was. Couldn't let anybody find out. She nominated the brother of a terrorist to the United States Military Academy. I stopped pacing and pressed my forehead to the wall. There was still time to get another recommendation, but who was going to give me one now? Certainly not the Vice President of the United States, so that was it. I was out. It was over. No West Point for me. My entire life, everything I'd ever done, everything I'd ever planned, was going down the toilet. I kicked my empty trash can against the wall. Mom called down the hall to ask if I was all right. Yeah, I yelled back. I'm just great. Everything's awesome. I kicked the trash can again to let her know just how awesome everything was, and she didn't say anything more. I paced her a few minutes longer, trying to calm down. As upset as I was, I knew I wouldn't worry about West Point now. It wasn't important. What was important was clearing Darius's name, and mine with it. Chapter 12. The first video was of Darius at the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, and there was nothing I hadn't already seen on TV. Darius is in the background, wagging his finger in the air as he urged on the insurgents attacking the embassy. No sound. I still don't understand how Darius had gotten from Afghanistan to Turkey, but it wasn't like he'd showed up in Japan. Turkey wasn't that far from Afghanistan in the grand scheme of things. I called up the second video. There was a lot more to this one that I hadn't seen, and it was hard to watch. I stared into the eyes of my brother as he looked up from the speech he read. It really seemed like he meant all of it. All the ranting against America and the infidels. The video was 12 minutes long, but it felt like an eternity. No wonder they edited this stuff for television, and it went on and on. Darius rambling about previous attacks on Islamic countries, death counts, and his plans for retributions. Like Rostam slaying the dragon, we will cut off America's head, the poison flowing from it like a river, Darius said. Like Rostam in the cave of the Sith Lord, we shall emerge triumphant. Whoa, wait, had Darius just said Sith Lord? I paused the video and clicked back a few seconds. There it was again. Like Rostam in the cave of the Sith Lord, we shall emerge triumphant. What was Darius talking about? The part about Rostam cutting off a dragon's head? That was real, or a real myth. At least it was one of the 7 trials of Rostam, but the line about Rostam in the cave of Sith Lord, that was something Darius and I had made up one summer about 10 years ago. We'd been obsessed with watching all the Star Wars movies, so we'd started adding lightsabers and spaceships and Jedi to all our Rostam stories. One adventure pitted our hero Rostam against Chancellor Palpatine, the dude who becomes the Emperor in the old Star Wars movies. In our story, Rostam went to fight him, but he was captured and taken prisoner in a cave by Palpatine's apprentice, Count Dooku. Captured and taken prisoner in a cave, Rostam did emerge triumphant in our story, but only after being captured and taken prisoner, and not just that. Count Dooku had used his Jedi mind tricks on Rostam to brainwash him and make him attack his friends first. Darius, as Rostam, had come after me as Sayavesh, and we had fought a long, convulsing lightsaber duel in the backyard. Rostam was just about to kill his old friend when Sayavesh used the force to hit Rostam in the head with a Nerf boomerang. The knock on the head was enough to bring Rostam to his senses right at the last minute. And together, Rostam and Sayavesh tracked down Count Dooku and killed him. That had to be the story Darius was talking about in the video. Rostam in the cave of the Sith Lord. I was the only person who knew that story. I sat back in my chair, stunned. There was something in these videos that could clear Darius's name, a secret message only I would understand. Darius had been taken prisoner by the bad guys, and they were making him fight against his friends. Chapter 13. Mom, Dad, it's a code. It's a code. Darius sent me a message in one of the videos. I called, running down the hall from my room. Dad came out of his study, a messy stack of papers in his hands. Mom came to the door of the kitchen. In the second video, I said breathlessly, Darius said Rostam in the cave of Sith Lord. That's from one of our games we played. You know how we always used to pretend we were Rostam and Sayavesh? Dad blinked and frowned. What? In the speech he read on TV, I watched all of it. The parts they didn't put on TV, Darius talked about one of our adventures, one where Rostam got taken prisoner, and... Cameron, I seriously doubt Darius is sending you secret messages, Dad said. I think what he had to say was pretty clear. But Mom shook her head, obviously fighting back tears as she returned to the kitchen. This is all bad enough as it is, Cameron, Dad said gently. Don't make it harder on your mother, on all of us. Not now. But Darius is innocent. He's been taken prisoner. He needs our help. The phone rang again. Dad picked it up, and I saw a flicker of hope pass across his face as he said hello. We were all still hoping the army would call. Say Darius had been recovered, that he was safe, that it was all a huge mistake. Dad's face immediately fell. It was just another reporter. No, he said. No comment. Please don't call again. He hung up and dropped the phone on the couch. Dad, I'm serious. Darius was trying to tell me something. Cameron, it's been a long day, Dad said. He turned and went back into his office. I wanted to scream. I picked up the phone and squeezed it. I wanted to throw the phone at the wall and smash into 1,000 pieces, knock over the lamps, kick the TV, break the windows, the door, anything to get my parents to wake up from this fog they lived in now. I reared back, ready to throw the phone like a football, when I remembered the DHS. I could call the DHS. The lady from the Department of Homeland Security had left her card here somewhere, told us to call in case Darius tried to get in touch with us. Well, he had tried to get in touch with me, hadn't he? In the video, the woman who'd raided our house less than 2 hours ago answered the phone on the second ring. Department of Homeland Security, this is Agent Griggs. Yeah, I said, this is Cameron Smith. You left your number and said to call if my brother tried to contact me. Darius? Yeah, Agent Gregg's voice became urgent. Darius has contacted you? How? When? I explained falteringly how I was sure that Darius was trying to send me a message in his video. As I told her about Rostam and Count Dooku, I realized how ridiculous it all sounded. A U.S. embassy has been attacked, people had died, and here I was talking about Persian mythology and Star Wars. I know it sounds stupid, but Darius had to be talking to me in that video. He had to. Agent Griggs was quiet for a half a heartbeat, longer than she should have been. I could tell she wasn't buying it. Has Darius been in actual contact with you? She asked, the urgency gone from her voice. That's what I'm trying to tell you, I said. I think he's trying to talk to me in the video. I think he's trying to tell us he's innocent, that he's a prisoner. Somebody's making him do all this. But he hasn't contacted you directly. No, I said, frustrated. She wasn't taking this seriously, but thank you for the information, Cameron, Agent Griggs said. Be sure to call us if Darius tries to contact you directly. It felt the chance to help Darius slipping away. Be loyal, I thought, remembering the code of honor. Never give up. Darius isn't a traitor, I said quickly, but Agent Griggs had already hung up. Chapter 14. I was watching the embassy bombing video again for the 1,000th time when Dad knocked on my door. Cameron, dinner. I had skipped school for the past week, glued to my computer in my room. Mom and Dad had let me stay home, and both of them had taken off from work. None of us wanted to brave the reporters camped out in our street. We didn't want to go to work or school and feel the eyes on us. Hear the whispers. Adam had texted me a couple of times asking how I was, but I never wrote back. Sometimes I wondered who Adam was going to take to the Super Bowl, or who Gary might be dating now, or who was starting in my place on the football team, but mostly I didn't care. I didn't have time for this stuff. I didn't have time to care about anything except proving Darius wasn't a traitor. I dragged the video slider back to the 6-minute, 39-second mark and hit play. I'm busy, I said. We have family business to discuss, Dad said. Family business? We'd never had family business to discuss before now, but now we did. Dealing with Darius was our family business now. I dragged myself out of my room, my back and legs stiff. I'd been sitting in that chair day after day, staying up late into the night, watching the videos over and over again. Darius made at least one reference to our old Rostam and Sivieth games in each one, and I was sure they were supposed to mean something only I could understand, but I didn't know what. Mom and Dad waited at the table looking as dismal as I'd felt. Mom had made lubia polo, an Iranian dish with rice, pilaf meat, and green beans. It was one of my favorites, but I had no appetite. Apparently, my parents weren't very hungry either. No one ate. Your mother and I have discussed moving, Dad said without prelude. Maybe changing our name. What? I said, you're kidding, right? I was stunned. We were the Smiths. We lived in Phoenix. That's the way it had always been. Changing our name? Move where? Mexico, maybe? Mom said quietly. Or Canada? I gaped at her. Canada or Mexico? I thought you were talking about California or something. You want to leave America? That's just great. How is that going to look? Cameron, Dad started. We can't just move to another country. We're Americans, no matter what Darius has done. The phone rang again. Dad got up from the table to answer it while I fumed. No comment, he said after a minute. No, please don't call here again. He'd no sooner hung up than the phone rang again. He frowned as he answered it. Hello? No, No comment. Please don't call again. While he was talking, Mom's cell phone started to ring. We were all getting calls every day, but not this frequently. This was like the night of the homecoming game, when Darius's first video had appeared, which meant only one thing. Darius had done something bad again. really bad. Chapter 15. The house phone rang for the fourth time as I turned on CNN. As American journalists had been beheaded on TV, Darius hadn't held the sword, but he'd stood by in the background. Stood by and not done anything to stop it? I sat down on the couch and stared. There was no message this time, no code, just Darius standing there while an American citizen was brutally murdered on television. My stomach churned. I think the only reason I didn't throw up is that I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Tears rolled down my face, spilling onto my t-shirt. I cried for the journalist family, for Darius, for the whole awful world. How could something like this happen? How could Darius let something like this happen? What happened to our code? What happened to being the bravest of the brave and helping the helpless? What happened to killing all the monsters? What happened to Darius? Mom ran to her bedroom and shut the door. Dad kept fielding phone calls. I sat and watched the TV like a statue, unblinking, like it was my duty to watch, like I owed it to the journalists and all those soldiers and civilians who died in raids Darius had been a part of. I couldn't even hear what was being said over the ringing phone, but it didn't matter. I just had to watch. Suddenly, the screen changed. CNN showed the now familiar photo of Darius, clean cut in his army uniform. Then, they showed a live picture of the front of a house. I blinked, dully realizing I was looking at the front of my house, the house I was sitting inside right that second. The camera zoomed in on a man in our front yard wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and backward Diamondbacks baseball cap. He had a handkerchief tied around his nose and mouth like an old West outlaw and was shaking something up in his right hand. I frowned and leaned in close, trying to understand what I was seeing. The man reached up and spray painted a giant letter T just below our front window. Dad, somebody's spray painting our house. Dad looked up from the phone and frowned, trying to process what we was seeing on the television. The man had followed the T with a large letter E. He's spray painting our house, I said again. Right now. He's out there right now. Dad ran for the front door and I followed him. Camera lights found us as soon as he opened the door, and reporters swarmed across the lawn like locusts. You, Dad called to the vandal. Get out of here. Come make me, Osama. The man called back. He kept spraying. He wasn't scared of us at all. The reporters reached us, lights blazing, questions flying, and Dad backed us both into the house. Dad, he's still out there, I protested. Just leave it alone, Cameron, he said, closing the door. I went to the TV. The vandal was almost finished in big, crooked red letters. He painted the word terrorist across the front of our house, right there for all of our neighbors and CNN and the rest of the world to see. Someone pounded on our front door and rang the doorbell. A reporter climbed over the fence in our backyard. Dad ran around locking all the doors and pulling all the shades down. It felt like we were under attack, like all America was going to break down our door and come for us. And then, later that day, they did. Chapter 16. Was I in an elevator? It was hard to tell. With the sack of my head, I could feel a slight vibration under my feet, and something about the closeness. The hum in the small space told me it was an elevator. It was the two other people I knew because they led me along, one at each elbow, steering me through whatever building they'd brought me to. Where are you taking me? I asked for the 1,000th time. Where are my parents? For the 1,000th time. Nobody answered me. I had to admit it, but I was so scared I cried. I'd been dragged from my house, wrist bound and a sack over my head, and thrown in a car. We'd driven for a while, the black bag hiding everything from me, and then I was taken out of the car and put on a plane. I recognized the sound of a jet engines warming up, knew what the short climb up metal stairs meant. My hands were recuffed in front of me so I could fit in a seat, and I was buckled in and told not to remove my seatbelt. I asked again where I was being taken, where my parents were, but got no answer. Someone put a cold plastic bottle in my hands and told me it was water. Drink, they told me. They pulled the sack up just enough to free my lips, and I drank, if only to prolong the wonderful sensation of fresh air on my chin, my mouth. After that, I got sleepy, passed out. I don't even remember the airplane actually taking off or landing. I woke up again in another car on the way to wherever I was now. As the grogginess wore off, the realization slowly dawned on me. I had been drugged. They'd put something in that water to knock me out, make me easier to deal with. I had been taken from my home, handcuffed, hooded, and drugged. My skin crawled with goosebumps. If I had been scared before, I was terrified now. This was deadly serious. I heard the elevator doors slide open. Hands grabbed me by the elbows, and we were walking again. Where had they taken me? If we got on a plane, we probably weren't in Arizona anymore. Some government facility in New Mexico, maybe? Colorado? Nevada? The Air Force had all kinds of bases out west. It could be any of them. I was walked down an echoey corridor and led inside a room. A chair squawked as it was pulled out for me, and the hands pushed me down into it. My arms landed on an empty metal table. There was a clink of chain, and someone attached my handcuffs to the table with a click. Then, right before the last person left the room, they pulled the black sack off my head. I sucked in cool, fresh air with relief as the door clicked shut behind me. I was alone in a small white room with a mirrored window along one side and a camera with a glowing red light up in the corner. I'd seen enough cop shows to know what the big window was for. That's where people sat and watched you while you were being interrogated. This was an interrogation room. There was nothing else there besides me, the table I was handcuffed to, and two more chairs. Hello, I called. I turned to the mirrored window. Is anybody there? Where am I? What's going on? Nobody came. Nobody answered. Somebody might have been watching me behind that glass and on that camera, but I was all alone. I put my head down on my arms and tried not to cry. Chapter 17. The door opened behind me, and I jerked my head up. Had I been sleeping again? How long had I been in this room? I didn't know. I didn't have my phone to tell the time. A white man and woman came in and sat down. The man was older than my father, but younger than my grandfather. In his 50s, maybe. I always had a hard time guessing people's ages. He was wearing suit pants and a rumpled white shirt with no tie. He had dark brown hair that looked like it hadn't been combed since last week, and stubble that was closer to the beginning of a beard. His mouth was small and thin over his short, sharp chin. His forehead was creased in a frown, or a look of concern, or maybe both. He sat back in his chair and studied me with his gray blue eyes. Do we really need the handcuffs? He asked. The woman ignored him. She set a thick file folder on the table and sat down, clasping her hands over it. She was thin and pretty and wore a business suit with a skirt. Her face was round and soft, but the way she wore her blonde hair pulled back made her look hard. Tough. Everywhere the guy was laid back and sloppy, she was neat and professional. She sat so straight, her back didn't even touch the chair. Cameron Smith, I'm Special Agent Tomazeski. She didn't introduce the man, and he didn't offer his name. Where am I? I asked. Why did you bring me here? Don't know anything. You are a guest of the United States government, the woman said. I tried to lift my hands away from the table where they were chained. A guest? We'd like to talk to you about your family, Special Agent Tomazeski said. Where are my parents? Can I see them? Not right now, Special Agent Tomazeski said. She flipped open the file folder. I want a lawyer, I told her. I didn't know why I needed a lawyer. I just wanted someone here with me besides these government people, and I'd seen people say that on TV. I'm afraid it doesn't work that way, she told me. You're not officially under arrest. Then can I go? No, as I said, you're a guest of the United States government. Until when? Until we get the answers we need, Special Agent Tomazeski said. Now let's talk about your mother. My mom? She was born in Iran, is that right? Here we go. I thought we're all terrorists because my mom was born in Iran. Yeah, so what? She came to America in 1978 to escape the Iranian Revolution and the rise of the Islamic Republic. Special Agent Tomazeski read from her file. If you already know, then why are you asking? I said. Cameron, this will be a lot easier for you if you cooperate. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. Your mother eventually settled in the Phoenix area and attended Arizona State, which is where she met your father. Is that right? I shrugged. Far as I know, I wasn't around then. Your father is a Christian, is that right? Kind of, I said. He doesn't go to church or anything, but he was raised that way. And your mother is a Muslim? I glowered at her. It's a free country, I said, even though I wasn't feeling so free right now. Please answer the questions. Yes, my mom was raised Muslim, I said wearily, but she isn't anything anymore. None of my family are. We don't go to church or mosque or anything. My mom was born in Iran, but she became a U.S. citizen after she moved here. My dad's American. I was born in America. Darius was born in America. We're Americans. The only other country I've ever been to is Mexico on vacation. We're not terrorists or members of Al Qaeda. Darius isn't a terrorist. Look, my mom is Shia. Al Qaeda is Sunni. If Darius suddenly got religious, which he didn't, he'd be a Shiite, not a Sunni. Al Qaeda wouldn't even want him unless they just needed an American Muslim to be the poster boy for their jihad. I let out a long, frustrated breath and tried again. We have a code of honor we live by, Darius and me. He's a United States soldier taken prisoner and being forced to do things against his will. He's told me. There's a secret code in his videos. I've been trying to tell you guys that. A code of honor? Secret codes? Lots of codes. Special Agent Tomazeski said, flipping pages in her folder. All right, let's talk about the secret code then. Chapter 18. Finally, I told her everything. I told the other agent on the phone about Rostam and how Darius and I used to make up adventures and the Sith Lord reference and what I thought it meant. There are others too in the newer videos, references to the games we used to play together. I just don't know what they mean yet. The man behind Special Agent Tom Zaska stirred, his eyes going to her. He looked like he was going to say something, but she went on. Do these games you played as children have anything to do with this? She asked. She pulled a glossy photograph from the folder and pushed it toward me on the table. I gaped at it. It was a picture of the code of honor Darius and I had written up as kids. The same code of honor I'd dug out of the stuff from Darius's desk a few days ago. The DHS had taken a picture of it, given it an evidence number. Evidence of what? Yeah, I said at last. This is Darius and I made this up. It's a code of honor. Our hero Rostam lived by in our stories. A code of honor you and your brother also lived by. Is that correct? That's what you just told me? Kind of, yeah. I mean, there are good rules for living your life. Special Agent Tomazeski nodded. Be strong, be brave, tell the truth, she said, skimming the list. Be loyal. She paused. Loyal to whom? What? Loyal to whom? She asked again. It says be loyal, but it doesn't say whom you should be loyal to. I shrugged. Your friends, I guess. Your family? Your country? Your faith? Sure, I said, I guess. Where was she going with this? Be loyal, never give up, kill all monsters? She paused. What monsters? What did this have to do with anything? Dragons, demons, vampires, ninjas, Soren, the Joker, Voldemort, Darth Vader, stupid stuff. We were kids. We made that when I was like 5. Special Agent Tomazeski clasped her hands in front of her again. So it wasn't about killing real monsters then? She said. I laughed. Maybe you haven't noticed, but there aren't real monsters. Aren't there? She asked, dead serious. Some people call the United States government monsters. Yeah, I said, slumping back in my chair as far as my handcuffs would let me. I'm thinking maybe they're right. The man beside Special Agent Tomazeski sat up straighter. When he spoke, his soft voice was laced with an Irish lilt. Whoa, now, listen, son, I don't think you should. Are you familiar with the Persian legend of the 7 labors of Rostam Cameron? Special Agent Tomazeski asked me, cutting her partner up. He slouched back in his chair. Sure, I said. My mom used to tell us those stories. So Darius would have been familiar with them too. Sure, Special Agent Tomazeski read from her file. Rostam fights beasts, dragons, demons. So those the kinds of monsters you and your brother swore to kill? Yeah, I guess. I don't see what's the last of Rostam's 7 laborers. Cameron, do you remember? He kills the white demon and saves the king. Special Agent Tomazeski nodded. There are some scholars who believe the last story is a metaphor, that it's really about the struggle between the Persians and invaders from the north, white invaders. That Rostam is a hero in Iran because he fought the white invaders who meant to conquer his kingdom and won. I saw where she was going with this, but it was crazy. But we never thought of it that way. The white demon was just a giant wizard who was Voldemort and Grop rolled into one. He didn't represent any white invaders or anything to us. We were just kids. But now you're not, Special Agent Tomazeski said. So you're saying what? What Darius thinks Americans are monsters he has to kill because he signed some made-up code of honor in middle school? That doesn't make any sense. Why would he hate America? He joined the U.S. Army. He's a ranger. Let's talk about Darius, Special Agent Tomazeski said. She flipped to another part of the folder, and I sank lower in my chair. I was starting to really hate that folder. Straight as in high school, varsity football, strong SAT scores, West Point, volunteered for the Army Rangers, made captain before the age of 25. All very impressive. Just as impressive of your record so far, Cameron. Almost identical. Trying to follow in his footsteps? That was a loaded question, and we both knew it. Yes, I was following in Darius's footsteps, but I thought he was an American hero, and she thought he was a terrorist. I didn't answer, and she went on. During his senior year, Darius spent a week in Washington, D.C., strange place for a 17-year-old boy to go on spring break. What did he do while he was there? I don't know. I vaguely remembered that Darius had taken a road trip there with some friends. From the photos on Facebook, it had looked like they'd had a lot of fun. Visited the White House, took pictures, did touristy stuff. No conduct recognizance for Al Qaeda conduct? No. Special Agent Tomazeski turned a page. Tell me about the instant when you were younger, when the 2 boys who lived down the street called you names. I couldn't believe it. How in the world had the Department of Homeland Security heard about that? Somebody who lived on our street must have told them, maybe Ben and Steve themselves, which meant they'd interviewed all my neighbors, trying to dig up dirt on us. What was she going to ask me about next? The Halloween I rolled a neighbor's house with toilet paper? Cameron, I shook my head. It was nothing. Those 2 kids called me names. They didn't even know what they were saying. And how did your brother react? He was angry, wasn't he? Uh-huh. Now I understand what she was getting at. Big Bad Darius, neighborhood terrorist. Yeah, he beat them up. I told her. There was no point lying about it. She obviously already knew the whole story. And 9/11, how did he react to that? I don't know. I was 3. But Darius would have been 11. That's a difficult time to suddenly have everybody look at you like you might be a terrorist. It's tough to have people look at you like a terrorist anytime, I told her. Like right now, for example. The guy beside her tried to swallow a grin. Point for me. Special Agent Tomaseski wasn't put off in the slightest. It must have been an impressionable time for him. I shrugged. Maybe it was. Maybe that's what made him want to be a hero. A hero to whom? To the United States of America. In case you missed it, in your folder there, he's been fighting for freedom in Afghanistan for 3 years. Darius is an American hero. Darius Smith has been seen on film training Al Qaeda militants and is responsible for the death of 53 people at the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, including 22 civilians. He also stood by and watched while an American journalist was beheaded yesterday. My face got hot. I lurched forward. The handcuffs clinked where they were attached to the table. He didn't do any of that. Not on purpose. He's a prisoner. They're just making it look like. Why would Darius throw everything away? Special Agent Tomaseski cut in. What would make him want to abandon his friends, his family, his country? I sat back and glared at her. I had already told her the truth. She just didn't want to hear it. Did you know that Darius is a devout Muslim, Cameron? I told you already he isn't. She slid another photo around from that folder of hers. Do you know what this is? She asked. It was a picture of a string of black wooden beads with a tassel on the end of it. It's a string of beads, I told her. It's a Miss Baba. She said, a string of prayer beads. Muslims use them to keep count of their prayers. We found this in your brother's apartment. I frowned. Why would Darius have prayer beads? He's not religious, I told her. Special Agent Tomaseski slid more papers in front of me. Printouts from websites. Our search of your brother's computer says otherwise. Somebody from his computer's IP address has been asking for rulings and questions of Islamic law in an online forum under the name Rostam90. Is it still forbidden to shave my beard if my job requires it? Can I go to parties where alcohol is being served even if I don't drink? Is it permissible to pray in my army boots? I stared at the printouts. Rostam90 had to be Darius. He was born in 1990. Had Darius really become a Muslim? And if he had, did that even mean anything? I'll ask you again, Cameron, Special Agent Tomaseski said. Loyal to whom? Chapter 19. I sat on the bed in the little holding cell that had become my new home, thinking about Darius. He was all I thought about now, all I talked about. I'd been here, wherever here was, for over a week now. Every day was the same. Wake up in the cell, have some stale cereal brought to me for breakfast, and then get taken to the interrogation room down the hall. Special Agent Tomaseski and the silent, nameless guy who would meet me there with her folder full of papers, and we would go over everything again. Or she would bring up some new part of Darius's life and spin it, making it sound like just another reason for him to become a terrorist, another explanation for why he'd turned traitor and joined Al Qaeda. Then I'd be brought back to my cell for lunch, and sometimes I'd be taken back to the interrogation room in the afternoon to go over it all again with 2 different people. I still hadn't seen my parents. I had no idea if they were even in the same building, and I still had no idea when I was ever going to get out of here, or what was happening with Darius. Day after day, I argued with Special Agent Tomaseski and the others, telling them that Darius wasn't a terrorist, but after a week of hearing why he might be one, I was beginning to wonder, to doubt, and I hated myself for doubting. I felt like I was betraying Darius for even thinking it. But what if Darius had betrayed me? What if Darius had betrayed everyone and everything he loved? What if Darius had never really loved any of us to begin with? What if he had been pretending all that time, playing the part of the all-American son, getting straight A's and playing football and joining the army, always with a plan to get to Afghanistan and run to Al-Qaeda, where he could at last be himself, finally let the real Darius come through? I stood and kicked my flimsy wooden bed. I hated doubting Darius. I hated that Darius had ever given me a reason to doubt, and I hated Darius for getting into trouble like this in the first place. We would all have been better off if he died in Afghanistan. No, I couldn't think like that. I could never think that. I didn't want Darius dead. I wanted him alive and back home and proven innocent. But what if he wasn't innocent? Special Agent Tomaseski certainly didn't think he was. She had him pegged for a terrorist from age 11, maybe even earlier. Was Darius still mad at the Ben and Steve Hollises of the world? Did he hate all the haters? Had they called him monster? while their looks and their whispers and their prejudice so often that he had finally decided to become what they said he was. And the codes, the secret codes I kept trying to tell them about, was I just imagining them? Maybe my brother had really gone insane. Maybe he was just mixing up the real legends of Rostam with the stuff we'd made up as kids. I sat down on my bed again. I felt like I didn't know anything anymore, least of all my brother. Someone knocked on the door like they did when they were bringing me food or taking me to the interrogation room, but it was late. My dinner tray had already been taken away, and they never came for me after dinner. I took a deep breath. What did they want from me now? Chapter 20. The door opened, and the man who'd sat in on all my interviews with Special Agent Tomazeski stepped inside carrying a chair. The guy with the Irish accent. He still looked rumpled and unshaved. It was good that he'd brought his own chair, especially if he was planning to stay. I had no other furniture besides my bed and the toilet and sink in the corner. My guard came in with the handcuffs they put on me to take me from place to place, but the Irish guy stopped him. We won't be needing those for this, Sergeant, will we? Will we? He asked me. I shook my head. Whatever was going on, we could do it without the cuffs. I hated those things. They hurt my wrists. Worse, they made me feel like I'd done something wrong. That's what I thought. The Irish guy set this chair down and nodded, the guard toward the door. I'll be fine. I'll call if there's trouble. My guard looked at me doubtfully and left. He probably had no idea who I was or what I'd done to get myself locked up here. For all he knew, I was a violent criminal. The Irish guy sat in his chair, facing me straight on. He crossed his legs and leaned back. Hello, Cameron. I know all about you, but you don't know me so well, he said. My name's Mickey Hagan. I'm an analyst with the CIA. An analyst with the CIA? I swallowed hard. I was in way over my head here. I I came to, well, Mickey Hagan paused. For the love of God, I don't know what I came here to do. I hadn't expected that. He was quiet for a long time, longer than was comfortable, but I didn't say anything. They'd made me talk all day in the interrogation room, and I wasn't in the mood to say anything more. I sat back on my bed and crossed my arms. That's not entirely true, Hagan said at last. I do know why I came here. I came to tell you a story. Great, a story from a CIA analyst who'd been sitting in on all my interrogations for a week. He must have seen my lack of enthusiasm written all over my face. I know, he said. Just hear me out. It has a lot to do with you. All to do with you. I wasn't born here, he went on. I'm an American citizen now, like your mother, but I was born in Northern Ireland. So long ago now, I don't care to mention. Do you know anything about Northern Ireland? I shook my head. It's just as well, I suppose. If you'd grown up when I did, you'd have heard all about it on the news. It's the wee top part of Ireland, Ireland's hat, if you will, he said, his eyes flashing with something like humor. Northern Ireland, you see, doesn't like to think of itself as part of the rest of Ireland. They're Protestants there, mostly Church of England types, and their rather Mother England still ruled the whole island. I didn't see how any of this had anything to do with me. Hagan waved a hand like he understood he needed to get on with it. There's still plenty of Catholics there, though, the rest of Ireland being full with them and all. They sort of spill over, you see. That was me when I was a lad, a Catholic Irishman in a country that didn't want one. My older brother, Connor, he was always getting into trouble with the law when we were boys. But that was the way of things. If you were Catholic in Northern Ireland, you had the deck stacked against you. You see, they sent us to separate schools. We had to eat in separate cafes. If you were Catholic, no Protestant would hire you for any job or work, and the Protestants in Northern Ireland, they own all the companies. Eventually, they built a wall between the Protestants and the Catholics, in case we didn't get the memo that we were to have nothing to do with each other. But the wall did very little to keep the peace. For decades, Northern Ireland was torn apart by what they benignly called the Troubles. The Republicans, the ones who wanted Northern Ireland back in Ireland proper, they fought the Loyalists, the ones who wanted Northern Ireland to stay part of England. They set fire to each other's homes, put bombs in their places of business, shot each other in the streets, and it didn't matter if you didn't have an opinion one way or another. If you were a Catholic, the Protestants always looked at you like you had a bomb under your coat. But maybe you know what that feels like already. I did know what it felt like, and he knew it. If you lived on either side of the wall in Northern Ireland, you were a part of it, sure as I'm sitting here, whether you wanted to be or not. Hagan said you were just as likely to die by accident in Northern Ireland as you were on purpose. Something about saying that made Hagan get quiet for a few seconds. Then he rallied and went on. So the Hagan family, we did what any good down on its heels Irish family does. When the going gets tough, we up and moved, away from Northern Ireland and its troubles down to Galway in the good old Republic of Ireland, without the Protestant government where to tell us what we could and couldn't do. We settled in nicely, thank you very much, and we thought that was the end of it. I went to school, got good enough grades that my parents didn't cuff me on the ear, and spent my every last minute mooning over girls and playing football. The real kind, not what you Americans call football. I couldn't help but smile at that. It'd been so long since I'd last smiled, I'd almost forgotten how to do it. But Connor was still getting in trouble with the law, Hagan said, even after it weren't Protestant policemen doing the hassling. He'd learned in Belfast not to trust the law, you see, and it was a hard thing to unlearn. He'd become a fair hooligan in Belfast, too, and that's a tough path to leave once you've started down it. Me, I went the other way. After graduation, I joined the Army, the Irish Army, and soon I was angling for a career in military intelligence, if that isn't an oxymoron for the ages. So while Connor found himself in and out of jail, I found myself on the other side of things, defending him, pulling strings to get him square again in the every watchful eyes of the law. He'd never done anything really bad, I kept telling myself, just a little rabble rousing now and again. Yes, he was political, yes, he wanted reunification with Northern Ireland. 15 years in, Belfast had made him a zealot. But in a free society, you're allowed to have opinions. Am I right? Or so the brochures say. Connor would get arrested at Sinn Féin meeting, and I'd stick up for him with my superiors because Connor wasn't truly guilty. He couldn't be. I'd grown up with the lad, knew him better than anyone else, and Connor Hagan wasn't a terrorist. So there it was at last, the connection to me. How many times had I said the same thing about Darius in that interrogation room? Darius Smith isn't a terrorist. Terrorist, he couldn't be. And what was my best argument? Because I'd grown up with him, because I knew him better than anybody else, and I couldn't believe it. Because if Darius Smith was a terrorist, I would have known about it, wouldn't I? Chapter 21. So here's another story for you, Hagan said. The other story about me and my brother growing up in Northern Ireland, the one isn't finished yet. We're just taking a little break from it. Call it poetic license. In 1982, a long time before you were born, God help us all, a young man working for the Irish Republic Army went into a fish shop in Belfast, Northern Ireland, carrying a bomb. Now, the Irish Republic Army isn't the Republic of Ireland Army, mind you. They're two different things. I worked for the Republic of Ireland's army, the ones with the tanks and the planes and the fancy uniforms. This lad worked for the Irish Republic Army, the IRA, as they were known, a terrorist organization hell-bent on bringing Northern Ireland back into the fold by any means necessary, which usually meant a petrol bomb or a machine gun. The Ulster Defence Association, an equally bloody-minded terrorist group fighting to keep Northern Ireland independent, was supposed to be having a meeting upstairs at the fish shop. This lad entered with the bomb, you see. The plan was for this young man to enter the shop disguised as a delivery man, scare the customers downstairs away with a gun, and then set his time bomb on a short fuse that would give him just enough time to get away before blowing the UDA leadership to heaven or hell. I don't know which, but something went wrong. The bomb went off before it was supposed to, before any of the innocent people downstairs could be chased from the shop, blew the whole building up. It did, raining down wood and brick and mortar, killing the 8 Protestants inside and wounding 50 more on the street outside, killing one UDA man too, the fishmonger, but no others. They'd canceled the meeting, you see, and the bomber, he didn't know. He died too, of course. Wasn't supposed to, but when the bomb went off early, he went with it. Killed him right off. Mickey Hagan stared at his shoe, visibly building up the courage to continue. The bomber was my brother, Connor, of course. He said at last, "You'll have to figure that out already, bright lad that you are. It weren't 2 stories but one, the beginning and the end of the tragedy. The bomber was my brother, the one I'd sworn wasn't a terrorist till I was blue in the face. Stupid me, I'd believed him when he told me he was off to see Galway United play football. I'd believed everything he'd ever told me, every last lie, and now he was dead for it. We both were in a way, but maybe you know a little bit about how that feels too. Darius wasn't dead, now that I knew at last, but I knew what Hagan meant. All my life I'd thought one thing about Darius, and now he was maybe something else. And it was like his whole life was a lie, and mine too, for believing him. So that's why Mickey Hagan was here, to tell me a story about his brother, the brother he trusted, believed, defended, only to watch his faith and loyalty go up in flames. He was here to help me accept the fact that Darius was a terrorist. I said, I was just so sure. Hagan nodded, understanding. Even after everything, I said, after everything he's said and done, I still can't believe Darius is a terrorist, and neither can I, Hagan said. Chapter 22. Wait, the CIA guy was telling me he thought Darius wasn't a terrorist? But you just got done telling me that story about your brother, about how you thought he was innocent. But it turned out he was guilty all along, I said. Because I wanted you to understand what happened to me, Hagan said, and I knew you, of all people, would understand. All week, I've watched you slowly lose your confidence in your brother, the same way I did. The truth is hard enough to accept. You fight it, deny it, But when you do come around, you start to question everything. You start looking for signs. Your brother was a terrorist in every little thing he said and did, and then you beat yourself up for being so blind. I nodded. If I've been doing that, everything when he walked in, after Connor died, I was a wreck, Hagen said. No, just because I lost my older brother, the boy I'd looked up to and idolized all my young life, but because I doubted myself. If I hadn't seen that Connor, who I knew better than anyone else, was a terrorist, how was I supposed to ever be right about anybody? I couldn't trust my hunches anymore, my intuition, my gut. He thumbed a fist on his chest. From that moment on, I was forever second guessing myself. My coach always says, no distractions, no doubts, no second guesses. I said, wisdom of the ages, that is, Hagen said. After Connor died, I was haunted like a banshee by all three. I was distracted, I doubted myself, I second guessed myself at every turn. And when you do that, in the spy business, well, it's over. You're done. The Irish army didn't want the bother of a known terrorist in their ranks anyhow. So I did what any good down on his heels Irishman does. You up and moved, I finished for him. Hagen smiled wryly. He liked that. Indeed, came to America, so as so many of my blessed people have, where it turns out they didn't mind so much that my brother was an IRA terrorist, as IRA had no beef with the USA, got a job with the CIA as a counterterrorism analyst, and here I am, a well-traveled, very experienced counterterrorism expert with a very high pay grade, but no confidence to make the tough calls and too much seniority to be let go. And what does that get you? You're the rumpled old man in the interrogation room who isn't allowed to ask questions. You're nobody, nothing, a joke. Hagen ran his hands over his face and up through his unkempt hair, then slapped his knees, surprising me. I want to believe again, Cameron. I want to be the man I once was, the man who believed my brother was innocent. No, who knew my brother was innocent. I want to stop second guessing every last thing. I want to have a gut feeling about something and be right about it for once. And I've got a gut feeling about your brother, Cameron. I think he's what you've been saying he is all along. A loyal American soldier who got captured and who's now doing his damnedest to tell us everything he can about what his captors are up to so we can stop them. I couldn't believe it. Just when I'd started to think everybody else was right about Darius, somebody finally came along who believed what I'd been saying from the start. I was all mixed up inside. I wanted to believe, like Hagen, wanted to go back to that innocent, naive Cameron who wouldn't hear anybody say a bad word about his older brother. But could I go back? Could I forget everything I'd learned about Darius this week? Could I ever see the events of his life as anything but the path to terrorism? Everybody else in this building thinks your brother is a traitor to his country, Hagen said, and they may be right. I don't know. That's my curse. I can't trust my gut anymore, but I want to try. So I'm choosing to believe in you, Cameron, in you and your brother and your code of honor. The only question now is, do you still believe? That was a good question, and one I wasn't sure I had a good answer to. I don't know if I do anymore, I told him, but I want to. Good enough, Hagen said. He stuck out his hand, and I shook it. Now, he said, if you got a bit of free time on your hands, I'd very much like to go over those tapes of Darius again with you. Chapter 23. There, I said, pointing to the video of the embassy attack. See how he's wagging his finger? It's like the pattern to the knocks. We used to send messages to each other through the wall, letting each other know when we could sneak into each other's rooms and talk at night. Hagen and I sat in a dark room full of TV monitors and computers. It was the first time I'd been somewhere other than my holding cell or the interrogation room. Hagen had even brought me a can of Coke and a bag of chips. This was living large. Ha! A couple of weeks ago, my definition of living large was dancing with Julia Gary and going to the Super Bowl with Adam. It's funny how little things can become big things when you've got nothing anymore. So, what's the message? Hagen asked me, his face lit up by the glow of the TV screen. I don't know. I never could figure it out, I said, feeling lame. That's because you're seeing it, not hearing it. Let's get it audible. But there's no sound. A little creativity wouldn't go amiss, I'm thinking. Hagen scolded. He rewound the video and we watched it again. This time, Hagen knocked on the table as Darius wagged his finger. Anything? He asked. I shook my head. It wasn't sounding like any of our codes. Maybe I'd been wrong. No, stop second-guessing yourself. No, not yet, I said. You say you use these codes at night through the wall. Yeah, yes? Close your eyes. Go back to being little and listening for your brother to knock to you through the wall. I did what he said, pictured myself smaller, younger, waiting in bed to hear the signal from Darius that the coast was clear, looking forward to sneaking into his room and watching him act out a new story he'd made up about Rostam with his G.I. Joes. Hagen knocked, knocked again, knocked again. I was ready to sneak out to go see Darius, but I suddenly knew I couldn't. Mom and Dad are coming, I said aloud. That's what that knock means. Mom and Dad are coming. Brilliant, Hagen said. At first, I thought he was being sarcastic, but he was scribbling notes in a black notebook. But what's that supposed to mean? Mom and Dad don't have anything to do with this. No, Hagen said, but put yourself in Darius's army boots for a moment. You're taken prisoner in Afghanistan, forced to train Al Qaeda soldiers, or at the very least, pretend to look like you are on film. Yes? This is good, and it's an opportunity for you to get a message to America. Maybe you've heard the militants talking about strike on a U.S. military installation or an American embassy. You want to tell us, warn us. No, you can't just say it out loud on camera. They never post that to the internet. You have to be sneaky. You have to say it in some way that your captors won't understand. You need a code, and luckily you already have one that you and only one other person in the world understand, that no one else in the world could ever crack. That's the best kind of code, unbreakable. But the knocks, they're not like letters or words you can rearrange. It's just, this one means Mom and Dad are coming. This one means the coast is clear. This one means I'm coming to you. Right? Okay, so your vocabulary in this code is limited, but it's all you've got for now. So don't take the message literally. Think about what Mom and Dad are coming means at its every core. I don't know. Look out, danger. Precisely. That's it in a nutshell. Danger. Right from the start, Darius was warning us. Trouble is coming, and I have to say he was right. It made sense. Even if he wasn't able to say what the trouble was, it meant something to just say, look out. So you send your message as best you can, Hagen said, queuing up another video, and you wait and you listen. And then, lo and behold, there comes another miracle. They tell you to read a speech directly to the camera. They ask you to talk. It was the second video, the one where Darius took responsibility for the attack on the U.S. Embassy. Hagen knew right where the Sith Lord reference was, and he moved the slider to the exact minute and second. He'd been listening to me all those times I told them Darius was trying to communicate with me. He'd taken notes, watched the video over and over again, trying to understand, trying to believe me. I was so grateful to him in that moment, I could have hugged him. You know, if that wouldn't have been really weird. So now you can slip something in, maybe, but you still have to be tricky. Hagen said, his eyes still on the video. Here, you don't have a code. Not like the one you used on the wall, but you do have a language you and only one other person share. Again, a language that no one but you and your brother can ever understand, can ever translate. The language of a shared childhood. Rostam in the cave of the Sith Lord. It's brilliant. It's so utterly confusing, so random, so cryptic that it makes no sense. It sounds like the delusional ramblings of a prisoner, or perhaps someone pretending to be a convert. Chapter 24. You think he's doing that? I asked, pretending to be on their side. It's an effective way to survive when there is no other option open to you, Hagen said. If you can make them believe you, and he may think will make him privy to more inside information he can pass along. Hagen loaded the next video, the third one. It was another rant from Darius, read from a piece of paper. This one didn't claim responsibility for anything or come on the heels of an attack. Here, Hagen said, clicking ahead at the 4-minute 37-second mark. Another Rostam reference. Rostam and the Death Eaters. I said. I knew what it was. I'd watched it again and again, trying to understand what Darius was trying to tell me. A Harry Potter reference, Hagen said smugly. Don't look so surprised. Just because I was born 100 years before you and work for the CIA doesn't mean I live under a rock. I've read each and every one of them, he said. Goblet of Fire being my favorite, of course, but I want to hear your version. I thought back to the story we had invented. Okay, so Rostam and Sayavash are tracking down this Death Eater, Bellatrix Lestrange, a devious and dangerous witch to be sure. Hagen said, taking notes in his black book. Right, we find out that Lord Voldemort has sent her to capture an old aura named Reginald Lumpbucket. Hagen looked up from his notebook. Is that a name I should know? No, we made it up. Well, it's a good one, Hagen said. Very English. Do you think that's the clue? Darius heard them planning something about somebody named Lumpbucket. No, Hagen said. He motioned again for me to keep going. So we tracked down Lumpbucket to this old house where he's supposed to live. Bellatrix Lestrange is there, too, looking for him, and we fight. Naturally, said Hagen. But while we were fighting, we find out from his old house elf that he's not there. Turns out Lumpbucket died a long time ago. Voldemort is foiled then, Hagen said. No, I said there's still his portrait. Hagen sat up. His portrait? Yeah, you know how in the Harry Potter books all the paintings are alive? Lumpbucket's portrait is in a museum, and Bellatrix Lestrange flies off to steal it. She robs a museum, Hagen asked. He put down his notebook and swung around to one of the computers. She tries to. We stop her, of course, but I still don't understand it. What Darius means with the story, I mean. I think I do, Hagen said. He turned the computer screen toward me. On it was an article from the Time magazine with a picture of an American soldier standing next to the charred metal door of a small building. The National Museum of Iraq has been undergoing extensive renovations since it was damaged during the 2003 Iraq War. Hagen explained. While those renovations have been taking place, the museum's remaining antiques were moved off site to a hidden location guarded by American forces. Only the United States military knew where those objects were being hidden. Yet 2 weeks ago, armed militants raided the location, stealing a truckload of Mesopotamian artifacts, some of which were more than 5,000 years old. Darius. I said Darius might have known the location. Maybe he was the one to tell them, maybe not, but I think we can definitely say that he was warning us that a museum was about to be robbed. Look at the date on the article and the date on the video. They were days apart, and Darius's warning had come first. Why would terrorists want to steal a bunch of old artifacts? I asked. Money, Hagen said simply. Guns and bombs and trucks cost money, and those artifacts are worth a great deal of it on the international art market. That they liberated cultural artifacts from the control of American soldiers probably didn't hurt either. Hagen grabbed my shoulder and squeezed it. This is terrific breakthrough, but we're too late. They already stole the stuff. It's probably long gone. Yes, there's a Marine colonel still in charge of recovery efforts from the thefts during the Iraq War. I'll pass along who we think perpetrated the crime to him. See what he and his team can do. But don't you see what this means? We have proof, Cameron. Proof. It's a dead cert that your brother is sending us coded messages. He dropped the name of a story about a museum robbery, and 3 days later, museum artifacts were stolen in Iraq. That's proof that we were right. Both of us. We were right. I was right. Darius really was trying to talk to me in those videos. I felt awful for ever doubting him. It was me and Darius against the world. No, I realized, not anymore. It was me and Darius and Mickey Hagen against the world. I finally had an ally. Let's keep going, he said. So Goblet of Fire's your favorite? I said. Well, he called up the next video. Of course, Hagen said. Ireland wins the Gittich World Cup in that one. Closest we'll ever get to winning the World Cup of anything. Chapter 25. Hagen met me at the door to the video room, where my guard now dropped me off every day. Got a new one, Hagen told me. A new video? He steered me toward a chair and hit play. It was Darius again, looking dirtier, more haggard. His beard was fuller now, and he was a turban on his head. I barely recognized him. It had only been, about a month and a half since the very first video, but for Darius, it had been a lifetime. For me, too. We'd been going over the videos for days, piecing together the clues and the events Darius had been referring to. I told Hagen the made-up Rostam stories Darius mentioned, and Hagen used his experience and knowledge of foreign affairs to link them to the recent incidents in the Middle East. What Darius meant with some of his references was still a mystery to us, but a new video trumped everything. This was what we'd been waiting for. If Darius dropped a clue in this one and we were able to decipher it, we might be able to stop whatever it was before it happened, maybe even find a way to rescue Darius. I focused on what Darius was saying. Most of it was the usual ranting about America and the infidels. Then he made another Rostam reference. I almost stood and cheered. Hagen was excited too. I could tell. He hurriedly rewound the video so we could hear it again. Like Rostam taking on the Joker's smiling goons, we will score a victory for justice, Darius said. Hagen was scribbling in his notebook. Like Rostam taking on the Joker's smiling goons, we will score a victory for justice, he repeated. That one. Seriously, I said. My elation of a moment before was gone, replaced by a feeling of hopelessness. Why? What is it? Hagen asked. What's the story? That's just it, I said. It isn't much of one. Hagen waited, pen hovering over a page in his notebook. I sighed. One day we were playing football in the backyard, one-on-one, just throwing the ball back and forth, and Darius had the idea that football had a bomb in it. Hagen looked up. A bomb? We pretended that the Joker from the Batman had put a nuclear bomb in the football and that Rostam and Sayavash had to score a touchdown with it to defuse it. Hagen looked up at me skeptically. We were kids, I said, for maybe the 100th time since we'd started this. All our games and stories were stupid. Everybody's games and stories were stupid when they were little because you didn't know any better. I'm just telling you what it was. Right, Hagen said. What else then? The smiling goons were Joker henchmen. He'd used his laughing gas on, like scary clowns with football helmets on. Darius and I, Rostam and Sayavash, had to get past them to score. What else? That's it. That's what I'm saying. There's nothing to it. We just mashed up playing football with our Rostam adventures. I don't know what good it does us. We watched the rest of the video to see if Darius gave us any more clues. Right toward the end, he dropped another reference to Rostam. Hagen and I both sat up straight again. And then, when our work is done, and the last heretic is swept from the face of the earth like Rostam at the world's end, we will go to our final rewards. Darius said solemnly, Okay, there's lots more to this story, I said, happy to once again be useful. Rostam and Sayavash have to help Optimus Prime steal back the Allspark from Syndrome, the bad guy from The Incredibles. You've lost me on this one, I'm afraid, Hagen said. We've moved beyond Harry Potter, yes? Optimus Prime is a Transformer. Carry on, said Hagen. So we're fighting one of Syndrome's giant robots, and we're winning. When Syndrome implants nanobots in Optimus Prime and turns him against us, so now we have to fight one of our allies. As you do, Hagen said, we managed to lock Optimus Prime in truck mode, but the nanobots, they activate Optimus Prime's self-destruct device. If we can't get rid of him, he's going to blow up and take out half of Phoenix. So Rostam jumps on board him and oh no, I thought. And what? And he drives him over a cliff at the world's end. Optimus Prime hits the bottom and explodes. Rostam dies to save the city. Hagen gave me a dubious look. But he lives, right? He's your hero? Heroes never die in the storybooks. No, I said. No, Rostam really dies. The whole next story is about Sayavash tracking down Syndrome to avenge his death. It turns out Syndrome's nanobots can rebuild Optimus Prime and Rostam, and they're brought back to life. So there you go, Hagen says. But, Mr. Hagen, there aren't really nanobots that can bring you back to life. Hagen knew that, of course. What he hadn't considered was what the story might actually mean. No, not until that moment. He hadn't thought what I had. That Darius was telling us he was going to sacrifice himself. That Darius was going to die. Chapter 26. The only sound in the room for a few minutes was the low hum of the computers and televisions. Higgins leaned back in his chair. All right, let's take them one at a time. As for the first story, I have to say, it's not much to go on, but let's see what we can do. All the other clues we figured out have been about events in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. Clearly, that region is their base of operations. It's still a big area, but it gives us a place to start. Not a lot of people playing football over there, I said. I don't think we should be focusing on the football angle, Higgins said. There's another part of that story that, as a CIA counterterrorism analyst, I find highly interesting. The nuclear bomb, I said. The nuclear bomb, Hagen agreed. There are only 9 countries in the nuclear club right now. The U.S., the U.K., China, France, Russia, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel. Israel won't say if they have nukes or not, but we know they do. So they count. Just don't tell anybody. State secret. I wouldn't, I stammered. Israel's for sure not going to give them one of theirs. Hagen went on. So the most likely place for terrorists to get one is Pakistan, which shares a 1,500 one-mile border with Afghanistan, most of which is barren, unpatrolled desert and mountains. Easy to sneak across is what I'm trying to say there. And Pakistan is where Al-Qaeda leaders go to ground when the drones start buzzing too close to home. It's their bunker away from bunker, if you will. So what you think? Darius might be telling us somebody's moving a bomb? It's possible. American football is all about moving the ball forward, gaining territory. Something had clicked for Hagen. I could hear it in his voice, see it in his face. He swung around to a computer to look something up. But what about the other story, the one about Optimus Prime and the nanobots? Does it mean what I think it means? Hagen found whatever it was he was looking for and leaned back again. I think it might mean everything we think it means, even a game of football. I didn't understand. It came to me when I said American football. Hagen told me, your brother, he mentions a story about football, a bomb, and you think it's one thing, I think it's another. But what if it's both? There happens to be a slightly massive football tournament about to happen next summer in Canada, the Women's World Cup. What, you mean soccer? Yes, well, the rest of the world calls it football, and your brother would know that. Being the international traveler he is now, have you any stories about soccer? No, I told him, none that I could think of. Hagen nodded. So, he would have had to use your version of football to send his warning. In this World Cup, you have a target truly worthy of jihad. Infidel women running about outdoors without veils, showing indecent amounts of skin, to a radical Islamist at least, and what better place to attack? Close enough to the United States to make a point, but not so close as to necessitate actual sneaking a bomb across America's borders. He turned the screen toward me, showing me Women's World Cup schedules and tables. And your United States team is all set to play Australia in the first round. You think they're going to set off a bomb at the Women's World Cup in Canada? I do, said Hagen, and I'm sorry, Cameron, but I think the other story means Darius is going to be the one to wear it. Chapter 27. Mickey Higgins swept a hand over a pizza box and a 2-liter of soda. "I come bearing gifts," he said. "Pizza?" I'd existed on nothing but cafeteria food and cartons of milk delivered to me on metal trays for as long as I'd been here. Just the sight of a pizza delivery box, and I was practically drooling already. My guard left me in the video room with Hagen and went to stand outside. "What's the occasion?" I asked. Hagen looked a little embarrassed. "Well, it's Christmas," he said. I sat down in one of the chairs. Christmas? It had been November when all this started. And now it was Christmas? If this had been any other year, I'd be home with my parents right now opening presents, watching basketball, trying to get through to Darius on Skype. I suddenly pictured our house. Cold, dark, empty, no Christmas tree, no food cooking in the kitchen, no music playing, no friends and family. Where were my parents? How long would it be until we finally got out of here? "I didn't know if you celebrated Christmas or not," Hagen said. "Yeah, we do," I told him. I sighed. "I miss my parents." "I know, son. I'm sorry. It's not my call." I nodded. I felt like Mickey Hagen was the only person in this whole building who cared anything about me. At the very least, your efforts is helping us decipher those messages in Darius's communications deserve some reward, Hagen added. He flipped open the box, revealing a large thin crust cheese pizza. Right then, it was the most delicious looking pizza I'd ever seen. He gestured at the pie, and I dug in. "Not good enough to get me out of here?" I asked, between a mouthful of pizza and a swig from the 2-liter. "I'm afraid not," Hagen said. "If anything, it's proven they were right to bring you here." I stopped chewing. "Seriously? I thought cooperating would help get me out of here." "It will," Hagen said, "eventually, and more importantly, it will save lives, possibly even your brother's." "So they're doing something about it. The Women's World Cup? The proper authorities have been notified. Security will be doubled. A special team is being sent to look for the bomb. I can't go into too many details, of course, but rest assured, measures are being taken." "And Darius?" I said, sipping again from the 2-liter. "What will happen to him?" Hagen took a slice of pizza for himself. "It's hard to say, isn't it? A lot of that will depend on what Darius does, if when they catch up to him." "Oh, wait," Hagen said. "I've got some kitchen paper here somewhere." While his back was turned, I quickly closed the lid on the pizza to look at the restaurant flyer taped there. Underneath, a picture of George Washington in sunglasses. It said, "We the Pizza." The address was 1776 51st Street, Northwest. No city. Weird name for a pizza place. I'd never heard of it. Definitely not any Arizona chain. Colorado, maybe? California? The area code was 202. I didn't know that one either. Hagen turned back with paper towels, and I flipped the box open again. "There we are," Hagen said, handing me a napkin. "Now, your mother can't complain when you see her again." Ha ha, we both knew Mom and Dad and I had plenty to complain about, and not using napkins was about 1,976,242nd on the list. "So now what?" I asked. I'd been brought on the video room, but we'd already figured out everything we could from Darius's messages. "DHS wants us to go back over the tapes," Hagen said. "Look for anything else Darius might be trying to tell us." I sagged. "But we've been over these videos dozens of times," I told him. "What else is there to learn? We've listened to them over and over and over again." Hagen sat up. "You're right." He wheeled his chair over to the computer monitors and called up the Al-Qaeda training video again. I groaned. "No, wait," he said. "Put the video on one of the big screens, dim the lights in the room, and hit play." But this time he muted the monitor. "What are you doing?" "You're right. We have to listen to these videos ad nauseum. Now let's watch them." Chapter 28. I wheeled my chair over, bringing the pizza and soda with me. It was strange sitting in the dark with my feet up on the desk, eating pizza and drinking soda, and watching Darius put Al-Qaeda militants through their paces like I was at home on Saturday night watching a TV with Adam. Adam? He'd be at home with his family today, opening presents. He always called each other later in the day, told each other what we'd gotten. I might even have walked over to his house that night to play out our new video games. Forget Adam, I told myself. He's certainly forgotten you. I watched as Darius silently called out commands to the troops, tapping his leg. We'd already figured out that code. More danger coming. I slid my focus from Darius to the men he was training, to the guns they carried, to the obstacles they jumped and ducked and rolled behind. The camera was jerky, like it was being held in somebody's hand. It moved around the small patch of desert, capturing Darius's training session from all angles. "Wait, stop," I said. Hagen practically fell over himself, getting to the mouse to stop the video, his wheelchair carrying him backward as he lunged forward. "What? Did you see something?" he asked. "Rewind it." "There," I said. The mountain silhouetted in the background. "I know it." Hagen looked at me skeptically. "You can't. This is Afghanistan. Maybe Pakistan." No, I'm sure I've seen that mountain before. I'd seen it a few times. I was sure. Not recently, but I thought about it recently. When? Then I had it. When I'd been remembering playing Rostam and Sayavash with Darius in the desert. Me and Darius looking down through scargely bushy at dry riverbed with the orange sun setting over that same mountain in the background. "Superstition Mountain," I said. "That's Superstition Mountain outside Phoenix." "Cameron," Hagen said. "No, I know it. And look, there, that plant, that's desert and verbena. Rockfish likes to eat it." "Are we talking now about the stories you and Darius used to make up, or the real world, Cameron?" "I mean the real Rakesh, one of the horses at the ranch where my mom works. She named him Rakesh after Rostam's horse. I used to go riding those trails in the Tonto National Forest all the time, all around Superstition Mountain. Rakesh and the other horses love to eat that stuff, and I'm pretty sure the Sonoran Desert is the only place it grows. At least I think that's one of the plants native in Arizona. We had to learn all that stuff in fourth grade. Hagen squinted at the screen. It's hard to tell what it is, he said. As for the mountain, that could be any mountain, anywhere. You can barely see it. Mr. Hagen, you gotta believe me. Darius is right here in Arizona. Hagen put his hands. Hold your horses, cowboy. First, let me run this by the CIA's geologists and botanists and see what they have to say about it. You've got geologists and botanists? Naturally, Hagen said. I couldn't tell if he meant that as a pun. I think he did. We'll see what the rock and plant folks have to say about it. In the very least, we shall leave no stone unturned, as if it were. But Cameron, I'm telling you right now, Darius isn't in Arizona. No matter how much you'd like him to be, he's in Afghanistan. That's where he was captured. That's where the broadcast came from. But if the attack is going to be in Canada, then they would have smuggled him into Canada by way of seaplane from Greenland. They would never risk bringing him to America just to smuggle him across the border into Canada. Cameron, believe me, when you watch one of these things again and again and again, looking for the tiniest of little clues, it's been my experience that you tend to find them, whether they're really there or not. I sagged again, but I tried to tell them, Hagen said. Told them we'd got all the blood we could from this stone. But do they listen to Mickey Hagen? No, not anymore. I sighed. I was so sure it was Superstition Mountain in the video, but now that he'd said all that, pointed out how far-fetched it was, I realized it was probably wishful thinking. The silhouette of the mountain in the video was small, cut off, blurry, and the scrub grass was just as hard to see. It could be anything, really. I was trying to put Darius somewhere else, somewhere away from all the real trouble, somewhere closer to home. Darius and I hadn't gone riding out there in a long time, but he'd have recognized he was in Arizona, if that's where he really was, wouldn't he? No, I was sure I'd seen the mountain in the background. It was Superstition Mountain. It doesn't make sense, I know, I told Hagen. Why would terrorists kidnap Darius in Afghanistan, then bring him all the way back here, through all that security, only to take him north into Canada for a suicide attack on the Women's World Cup? Hagen's eyes slid to the TV monitor. They wouldn't, of course, Hagen said. This thought's elsewhere. But they did, I said. I don't know why, Mr. Hagen, but they did. Darius is in Arizona. Chapter 29. New Year's came and went. I marked it in the calendar. I began keeping in my head, but for me, there were no parties, of course, no ball games to watch. I didn't worry too much about it. All I could think about was Darius in Arizona. When I wasn't in the video room trying to convince Mickey Hagen, I was pacing myself, comparing my memories to that video. I was sure now Darius was in Arizona. It didn't make any sense, but I knew it was true. But if I knew, why didn't Darius? And if he knew it, too, why didn't he say anything? Was he counting on me noticing, just like I noticed his hand signals and the Rostam clues? I almost didn't catch those. Wouldn't have it if I hadn't gone over every second of those videos. If Darius knew he was in Arizona, he would have said something, dropped some clue, which meant he didn't know. Or he did, and he was deliberately hiding the fact from us. That thought hit me like a 16-ton weight. I'd been so sure Darius was an innocent victim in all this, then the CIA and Homeland Security had convinced me he might be what everybody else thought he was. Then Mickey Hagen talked me down from the ledge. But what if Darius really was messing with us? What if the clues he was feeding us was deliberate fakes? What if he knew he was in Arizona all along and was dropping these clues to throw me off the scent, knowing I would be the one person in the world who would do anything I could to find him? I sat down on my bed and put my head in my hands. I didn't know what to think anymore. The only thing I was sure about was that the mountain in the background was Superstition Mountain and that Darius was in Arizona. The rest of it made me sick. All this second guessing would have made Coach Reynolds' head spin. There was a knock at the door and Mickey Hagen came in. He didn't bring a chair and he didn't look happy. The geologists have been over the videos, Cameron. They say that mountain in the background could be any of the dozen in Afghanistan's shag-high hills, let alone the rest of the world. But Hagen held up a hand. I know, you're sure. But these people, they're experts. They've been over every inch of that terrain on their computers. I've been over it on horseback, I told him. What about the verbena? Too blurry to tell, Cameron, but most likely another variable of verbena that does grow in Afghanistan. I'm sorry. I stood and paced again. They're wrong. He's here, Mr. Hagen. I know it. Well, I asked for reconnaissance planes to take pictures of the area around your mountain just to be sure, and they didn't see anything unusual, Cameron. Just hikers and riders and forest rangers and desert. Lots and lots of desert. But there are caves up in those mountains, I argued. They could be hiding out anywhere up in there, and no one would ever know. One flyover might not catch them. Cameron, I kicked the bed against the wall. It made enough racket that the guard outside came in, his hand on the pistol at his side. We're all right, Hagen told him. Just let off a bit of steam. The guard wasn't so sure everything was all right, but Hagen outranked him. The guard scowled, backed outside, and closed the door again. Now there's no reason to go giving out, son. Hagen said. That won't do anybody any good. Most of all, you. Makes me feel better, I grumbled. Well, that it might, but I'm only after what's best for you. I hope you know that. And what's best for you right now is to keep a lid on that temper of yours, all right? It just sucks so much to know I'm right and have no one to listen to me. I'm listening, Hagen said, but the DHS, they have their answer, and the answer is Afghanistan, and they know it for a fact. This was new. How? I asked. The plot we uncovered, the one Darius told us about with your delightful ticking time bomb. Football story. It's been foiled. Chapter 30. At 21:52 local time, a Navy SEAL team raided a building in a village outside Zarhun Shahar, near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, Hagen said. They intercepted a small team of highly trained terrorists with the blueprints for Investors Group Field in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the location of the United States women's team's first World Cup match, and enough explosives to flatten it. Nuclear, I asked? No. Mercifully, Hagen said, but the rest of the intel was good. Cameron, very good. You saved a lot of lives today. Did anybody die in the raid? 7 militants, 2 Navy SEALs, Hagen said quietly. And Darius, I asked. I almost didn't want to know. Was he caught? He wasn't there, Hagen said. Neither was the man we think is behind all this business. An Iraqi terrorist named Haydar Ansari. So there you go, I said. This Ansari guy and Darius, they weren't there because they're here in America. Cameron, even if they were able to smuggle Darius back into the country, there's no way Ansaria is here with him. He's on every international watch list from here to Australia. He's infamous. He would never leave the Middle East. It would be too dangerous for him, and he's too much of a coward. Then just Darius is here. I said, please, Mr. Hagen, I'm begging you. Something else is going on. Hagen shook his head, but I could tell he had doubts, that he was second-guessing himself as much as I had been. What does your gut tell you? I asked him. My gut tells me I missed dinner. I wanted to kick my bed again, but I didn't. Instead, I turned my back on Hagen and walked as far away from him as I could in the little room. Cameron, he said apologetically. Cameron, let's say I do believe you. Then I started, but Hagen cut me off. Let's say I do believe you, Cameron. It's not about my gut this time, or yours. My gut told me you were right about the code, and you were. That was the clue we needed. We averted a terrible thing, and that's a fact. But this business about Arizona, I've done all I can. Have you? I challenged him. Have you really? Yes, Hagen said coolly. Have you gone to the media? Cameron, that's not how we do things here. Have you contacted the forest rangers then? No, Cameron. Sent in a SEAL team? Sent in an elite spec ops force in a national forest outside Phoenix? Hagen said. Cameron, be serious. How far up the chain have you taken this? To your boss? What about your boss's boss? Or his boss, the national security director or whatever? Cameron, you're not trying, I yelled at him. I've tried all I can, Hagen shot back. I'm not the one you want for an ally here, Cameron. You've got the wrong one. This code of yours, this intelligence, the raid, this was a win. A big one. Just getting them to listen to me was a victory in itself. And victory that won me points at this agency, and that's a fact. Points I could maybe spend pushing this Arizona angle. But no matter how many shillings I have in the bank, no matter how hard I push, there's always going to be a wall I can't knock over. No one is ever going to wipe my slate entirely clean. I'm always going to be the ignoramus who second guesses himself so much he can't write an intelligence brief without contradicting himself, who isn't good for anything more than sitting in on an interview of a high school student. I'm always going to be a damned fool who didn't know his own bloody brother was a terrorist 30 years ago. That's who I am, he said, finally calming down. That's all anyone will ever remember. It's all anyone will ever remember if you let it be, I told him. I'm sorry, Cameron. I've done all I can, Hagen said, and he left me alone. Chapter 31. Mickey Hagen didn't come for me the next day. Or the next, neither did Special Agent Tomazeski or any of the other interrogators. The only person I saw for the next week was my guard when he brought my meals. I placed my cell like a caged lion. I banged on the door and asked for Hagen. I left my food untouched on its metal trays. How could Hagen just roll over like that? How could he not do everything he could to convince them of the truth? He knew there was something wrong. I could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. That day, I'd realized the video was filmed in Arizona. I'd said it didn't make any sense, and he'd agreed with me. They wouldn't have brought Darius all the way to America, snuck him across the border, and hidden him away in the Tato National Forest just so they could turn around a few months later and make him carry a suicide bomb into the Women's World Cup in Canada. Hagen and I both knew that was stupid, but Darius was in America. I was sure of it, which meant only one thing. The terrorists were planning on using Darius in a strike here in America, and soon. Hagen knew it too. If one was true, Darius was in America, the other was true. Darius would soon be used against an American target. So why hadn't Hagen done everything he could to convince him of the truth? I kicked my bed. My guard was so used to it by now that he didn't bother to put in an appearance, and I kicked it again just for him. Frickin' Mickey Hagan. After all we'd been through, I thought he was on my side, do or die, but I saw now it was all just a trick. I thought he'd been my friend, just like I thought Adam and Julia and all the rest were my friends, but they weren't. No, not deep down. They were friendly enough when it didn't matter, but when push came to shove, they abandoned ship, every last one of them. Even Mickey Hagan. It had all been a trick. The story about his brother, all that camaraderie, the pizza and sodas, it was all to get me to open up, to pump me for information. The story about his brother was probably just made up. I realized a way in and a way out. It was all spy tricks. All those people who'd interrogated me, that hard-looking lady who convinced me Darius was a terrorist, they were the bad cops, like on TV. Hagan was a good cop. He came in afterward and told me I was right. Told me he believed in me, just to get my help, just to get the good intel. And then when he got what he wanted, he dumped me faster than Gary. I kicked the bed again, and my foot tray skittered across the floor. I didn't care. I knew the truth now. I was all alone in this, in everything. All alone except for Darius, trapped in some cave somewhere in Arizona. Maybe, I thought. No, no doubts, no second guesses. I remembered our code of honor, the one that lady had thrown in my face like it was the reason Darius had turned traitor. Be loyal. I knew who I was loyal to. Darius. Darius was innocent. He was being held in Arizona by terrorists and didn't know where he was. Never gave up. If Mickey Hagan couldn't believe that, wouldn't believe it, I would. I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't let go of the truth. But what was I going to do with the truth? Mickey Hagan had been my ally, my voice at the CIA. When I'd stuck to my guns about the code and the videos, he'd been the one to convince his superiors I was right. I was sure that Darius was being held prisoner in Arizona, that he was going to die in a very real, soon-to-happen suicide attack right here in America. Darius was going to die, and who knew how many more people with him. He was going to die, and everybody was going to think he really was a terrorist. But here I was, helpless, trapped in a cell, a prisoner of the United States government, the very country I wanted to help defend. I had to do something. But what, Cameron? I asked myself. The answer came to me with perfect clarity. I had to escape. Chapter 32. It was crazy, stupid, impossible. Escape from a U.S. government facility? Me? But I had to try. Darius was my brother. I had to do everything I could to help him. Or die trying. I nodded like I'd been talking to myself, like I'd been having an argument and had finally been convinced. I had to break out of here and get to Arizona. Find Darius in the mountains outside Phoenix. And then what? Genius. And then tell the authorities, take them there? They'd arrest me, put me back in a cell. But it wouldn't matter. I'd tell them right where Darius was, exactly how to find him, and this sorry guy, and whichever terrorists were with him. Even if the authorities didn't believe me, they'd come for me. Wherever I told them I was, and then they'd see. They'd see there really was terrorists right here in America, right in the mountains outside of Phoenix. I was starting to sound a little crazy, even to myself, but I had no other choice. Mickey Hagan had abandoned me, given up, crawled back into his hole of regret and self-doubt. But not me. I wasn't going in there with him. I was ready to get out of my hole. I had murmuring outside my door. I quickly put my ear to it and listened. My guard was talking to somebody with a big, deep voice. Not Hagan. Somebody new. I had no idea what it was about, but I heard the jangle of keys. The guard was going to open my door. My eyes roamed the room, half crazily searching for something to use as a weapon. I looked up at the camera in the corner. I can't imagine how I looked at that moment. My back to the door, eyes bulging out of their sockets, unshaven, unbathed, like some cartoon madman. They'd seen me. Whatever I did, they'd know. But I had to get out of here, get back to Arizona, find Darius, stop the terrorist plot. The metal food tray. My eyes locked onto it, and I snatched it up like it was a fumbled football. I hefted it in my hands, taking the weight of it. Not too heavy, but when swung at a face, the guard's keys jangled in the lock, and I flattened myself against the wall, ready to strike. Chapter 33. This was it. My only chance to escape. My only chance to find my brother. To save Darius. I had to. I was the only one who could do it. My breath came short and quick, and a bead of sweat rolled down the hollow of my back. No, relax, I told myself. Breathe. Do like you do when you're standing behind the quarterback, waiting for the snap, waiting for a hole to open up to run through. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. I embraced the anticipation, the adrenaline. Let them fill my head like white noise. Let them push out everything else but my goal. No distractions, no doubts, no second guesses. On the football field, there was nothing but me and the defense. And here, now, there was nothing but me and that guard. Me, the guard, and the metal tray I was going to brain him with. The door opened, the lights flickered on, and burly, broad-shouldered African-American soldier stepped inside. Cameron Smith, the soldier said, I'm here to transfer you to another. I swung the metal tray like a club, aiming right for his face. They met with a jarring clang, and the soldier went straight down like he'd been clipped in the back of the legs. What was that? The guard in the hall said. He was drawing his gun as he came into my cell. I put my shoulder into the door like I was hitting a tackle dummy, slamming the soldier between the door and the frame. He dropped his gun and staggered, but he didn't go down. I hit him with the door again and again. He finally fell on top of the first guard, unconscious. I was panting. I glanced up at the camera again. Sure, my attack had been witnessed. I waited for the yells, the alarms, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I took a step toward the door, and my legs almost gave out, like I'd just run 100 wind sprints. But I didn't have time to collapse. I didn't have time to calm down. If I wanted to save Darius, I had to get out of here. Now, I peeked out into the hall. Empty. The second guard was still lying half in, half out of the door, and I dragged him inside by the arms. I stood over the two men, looking down at their unconscious faces. Oh my God, what was I doing? What had I become? A couple months ago, my life had been high school, football practice, Julia, Adam, West Point applications. It all seemed so insignificant now, so far away, but as insignificant as it was, if I walked out that door now, if I ran, it was all good for now. Gone for good. Football and college and girls, all the rest of it. If I ran out that door, there was no going back, not ever. I pushed the fear down deep. No distractions, no doubts, no second guesses. I took the first guard's gun from his holster, locked the soldiers in my cell, and ran. Chapter 34. I was 2 corridors away from my cell when the alarm went off. It wasn't loud, not like a house alarm meant to scare away crooks. It was more like a persistent low beep. Beep, 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 beep. Beep. In a way, it was more ominous than a blaring alarm. It was like the little flashing red light up near the ceiling every few feet was saying, I just wanted to let you know Cameron Smith escaped from a cell, but we're not too worried about it. We know you're going to catch him. Carry on. Beep, 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 beep. There were doors all down the hall, closed doors, without windows in them, and each marked only by white numbers on little black plastic squares. Were those more cells? Were my parents behind one of these doors? Some other prisoners? That's what we were. Me and my parents and anyone else being held here. We weren't guests. We were prisoners of the United States government. Whatever was behind those doors, I was in perpetual fear that one of them would open and someone would step out and grab me, of course, or worse, make me use the gun. I looked down at the gun I'd taken from the guard. It was cold and black with more buttons and switches on it than I thought guns had. Could I really shoot someone with it if I had to? Would I? There was a turn up ahead, another corridor, an emergency exit sign pointed left. The way out. That's what I wanted. I had to get outside the building and run all the way back to Arizona from wherever it was they had taken me. New Mexico or Colorado or California or wherever, and find Darius before it was too late for him and for whoever it was he was supposed to kill. I slinked down the hallway. I was almost to the end when a radio squawked around the corner. I was just about to run into a guard. I grabbed the handle of the first door I found and tried it. Locked. I lunged for the door across the hall. It opened. The lights flickered on automatically as I threw myself inside. I was in a little office break room. Refrigerator, cabinets, coffee maker, microwave table, 2 chairs, trash can, soda machine, the smell of burned coffee and liquid cleaner. A door opened and closed nearby. They were searching the rooms. In a panic, I looked for any place I could hide. The cabinets were all filled with shelves and packed with random mugs and paper plates and half-empty boxes of coffee filters. The trash can was too small to fit inside, the table too tiny to hide under. Idiotically, I threw open the door to the refrigerator, thinking I could hide in there. I couldn't, of course. I'd have to dump all the soda cans and plastic tubs full of moldy old lasagna and half-eaten cans of soup in the trash and find some place to hide the glass shelves. And then, probably suffocate. I spun around, trying to think what to do, where to go. I still had the gun. I could hide behind the trash can, wait for whoever it was to come inside, and shoot them, run past their dead body, and out the exit and disappeared. I stared at the gun in my hand. It was heavy, heavier than I thought a gun would weigh, a lot heavier than all the pistols I'd played with as a kid. Too heavy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't shoot an American soldier in cold blood, even if they were coming to take me back to the cell, even if I was never going to see daylight again, not even for Darius. Another door closed, footsteps close by, the squawk of a radio. I was busted. And then an idea came to me, a memory, really, of another time there had been alarms, a chaos and panic. A crazy, stupid idea that would have been funny if I hadn't been freaking out. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed the half-empty soup can. At my 16th birthday party, Adam had put a can of soup in the microwave without knowing any better and almost burned my house down. I hurried over to the microwave and tried to shove that can inside, but there was a spoon sticking out of the top and it wouldn't fit. I took the spoon out and almost tossed it into the sink before I realized it was better in the microwave. More metal, more sparks. I tossed it in with the can and yanked open drawers, stuffing more silverware into the microwave. When it was full, I slammed the door closed and punched the button for popcorn. The microwave lit up and started humming, the can and all the silverware rotating inside. I could already hear the metal popping and crackling as I ducked behind the trash can. The door opened. A soldier in fatigue stepped inside, his gun held out in front of him in both hands. His eyes went straight to the sound of the microwave. The moment it burst into flames, the soldier recoiled. The sprinklers in the room came on, suddenly dousing everything with rain. The fire burned on, the microwave still bouncing crazily off all that metal. Another alarm, shrill and far louder this time, pierced the air. The soldier lunged for the fire extinguisher on the other side of the room. I burst from where I was crouching behind the trash can and ran out into the hall, around the corner, a glowing green exit sign above a door beckoning, promising escape. I didn't look back to see if the soldier was following me. I banged through the door, expecting to see a starlit field, a parking lot, a road, but I wasn't outside at all. I was still inside. I was in a stairwell with simple concrete stairs going up and down. The door clicked shut behind me, muffling the sound of the alarms, and I saw the words painted on it. Sub-level 22. I had 22 flights of stairs to climb just to reach the ground floor. Chapter 35. The door had barely clicked shut behind me before I was running up the stairs, taking them two at a time. 22 flights. All this time, I'd been 22 levels underground. I'd had no idea. I was huffing by sub-level 17, but I had to run. They had to know I'd made the stairwell. I'd set a microwave on fire just outside the exit door. Any second now, somebody would. I heard a door burst open in the stairwell, heard boots on the stairs coming fast. But from which direction? The sound echoed up and down the stairwell. If they were coming up, I might be able to beat them to the ground floor. Might. If they were coming down, they'd catch me for sure. And there was nowhere to hide in here. It was just level after level of stairs and doors. There was only one thing to do. I had to get out of the stairwell. I tried the door at sub-level 15, locked. A digital keypad beside the door was the only way in. I ran up the next set of stairs to sub-level 14. It was locked too, with another keypad beside it. I stopped, breathing hard, and made myself think. Had all the doors been like this? Yeah, I could see them. Little keypads like this, one outside every door. If every one of those doors had one, sub-level 13 would too, and 12 and 11 and 10 and 9. If I wanted out of the stairwell, I had to get through one of these locked doors. Boots thundered. Another door opened and closed. More soldiers. I had to move, but I didn't know the code. I punched in 4 random numbers on the keypad. A little red light came on. I tried another 4, another red light. The footsteps were getting closer. Come on, come on, come on. I told myself, think, what's the code? This was sub-level 14. I tried 1414, red light. 4141, red light. 1234, red light. 4321, red light. In frustration, I mashed all the buttons with my fist. The keypad hesitated for a second, and I held my breath. The red light came on. I cursed. Soldiers were almost on top of me. Wait, I still had the gun. I still wasn't going to shoot any soldiers. I wasn't even going to pretend to. But I could shoot the keypad. The soldiers would hear it, and they'd see what floor I was on from the bullet hole. But if it worked, if the door opened, at least be out of the stairwell. I aimed the gun at the keypad, turned my head away, slowly squeezed the trigger, waiting for the bang. The door made a chunking sound, and a green light blinked on the keypad. The door had unlocked, but I hadn't even fired the gun. What'd I do? Scare the keypad into opening? I didn't have time to figure it out. I twisted the handle, pulled the door open, and slipped inside, gun at the ready. Chapter 36. Brown and red patterned carpet, gray cubicles, fluorescent lights, and water cooler, mail cart, the soft click of fingers typing on computer keyboards. Suddenly, I wasn't in a secret U.S. government detention facility. I was in an office building, a U.S. government office building, I was sure, but on another floor full of locked doors and interrogation rooms. I heard footsteps behind me, boots running in the stairwell, and I backed away from the door. The nearest cubicle was empty, and I slipped inside and hid under the desk. I waited for the door to fly open, for dozens of soldiers and security officers to come pouring through and catch me. But nothing happened. The door didn't open. No soldiers came charging through, of course. They wouldn't have expected me to be able to get past the keypad security. They didn't know I'd come through onto this floor. They had run on by, still expecting to find somewhere in the stairwell. I had time to catch my breath, but not too much time. Pretty soon, they'd figure out that I had to have made it through one of those doors, and they'd trip the alarm, start searching all the other floors. The alarm, I listened. There wasn't an alarm going off on this floor, and you couldn't hear the alarm from downstairs all the way up here. Maybe people on this floor didn't know there was a prisoner loose. Maybe the people on this floor didn't even know there were prisoners in the building at all. That was a chilling thought. I peeked over the edge of my cubicle. There was a woman in the next cubicle with her back to me, typing away at her computer with headphones on. The whole wall of her cubicle was filled with pictures of a black and brown dog. A German shepherd, maybe, on hikes at the lake, on the couch. This lady loved her dog. The cubicle stretched out across the room, interrupted every now and then by big white pillars. I saw somebody stand up in one of the cubicles. A man. I ducked instinctively. He went to the other direction, though, and I watched him walk to a copier on the far side of the room near the elevators. The elevators. I couldn't go back in the stairwell. They'd be looking for me there. But the elevators, they were my ticket out of here. But they were all the way across the room, and I didn't exactly look like I worked here. The man and the woman were both wearing business suits. I was wearing jeans, sneakers, and one of my t-shirts that they'd brought me from home when my stay as a guest became more like semi-permanent resident. I didn't look like a government agent. I looked more like the pizza delivery boy. Delivery boy. I peeked around the cubicle door at the mail cart parked by the stairs. I might not look like I belonged in a cubicle, but maybe I would pass for a mailroom delivery guy, unless the mailroom delivery guys in secret U.S. government facilities wore suits too, or were soldiers or something, but it was worth a shot. I certainly couldn't go back the way I came. The mail cart was like a two-decker shopping cart with the handle on one end and wire baskets on top and bottom. The top was filled with fire folders with names on the labels. People who worked on this floor, I guessed. The folders were all empty. Somebody had already delivered all the mail. That was good. I wasn't going to be doing any real delivering. The bottom part of the cart had a bunch of brown 9 by 12 envelopes in it, each one with 3 columns of spaces on each side, where you could write in the name of the person inside the building you wanted the envelope to go to. Inter-office mail. There were empty too. An ID badge hanging off the top basket had a picture of a guy named Chad Dill, position, mail clerk on it. He didn't look a thing like me. What the heck? I buried my gun in the pile of envelopes, took a deep breath, picked out the elevators across the room, and started pushing. Chapter 37. I wanted to sprint, wanted to run with the cart like I used to do in the parking lot of the grocery store, hop on and zoom past all these cubicles. But I had to be cool. I had to walk slow enough so that when people saw me pass, their cubicles, they would barely even look at me. If any of these people were working on Darius's case, if any of them recognized me, it was all over. The mail cart wheels squeaked so loud I jumped. I tried it again, going easier this time, but it still squeaked loudly in the quiet office. It was like a bullhorn announcing my presence. Here I am, Cameron Smith, escaped fugitive, come and get me, but there was nothing else to do. The mail cart was my costume, my disguise. I needed people to see it, not me. Well, one thing was for sure, they were going to hear it. I squeaked past the dog-obsessed lady, but she didn't even look up. I didn't know if she could hear me with her headphones on, or if she was so used to the squeaky mail cart by now that she just ignored it. I pushed on, squeaking the whole way. The elevators looked impossibly far away. Another woman came out of the cubicle right beside me, scaring me to death. I froze, and she squeezed on by without a second look. I breathed again. Okay, test number 1 complete. I looked like the mail guy. Maybe not Chad Dill, but some mail guy. That's all that mattered. It was time to get moving again. The alarm might sound any second now, and then I wouldn't be overlooked. I pushed on, a little faster this time, threading my way through the cubicles. At first, I kept my head down. But when it looked like nobody even cared that I was there, I started peeking into the cubicles, watching people as I passed. It was night, at least I thought it was night, but there were still a lot of people at work. Maybe they worked in shifts, like a factory, the intelligence factory. At the intelligence factory, your secrets are our business. I couldn't tell what people were doing exactly besides typing on computers, watching videos, and reading newspapers in foreign languages. It all looked pretty boring, nothing like Q's secret gadget lab and James Bond, where were the exploding pens and electromagnetic watches? Hey there, hold on, a man called. I put my head down and kept pushing, hoping he wasn't talking to me. Hey, I said. Hold up, the man said, closer now. A hand grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. I was busted. Chapter 38. I froze. I was more than halfway to the elevators, but too far away to run for it. My eyes went immediately to the pile of envelopes in the bottom basket where my gun was hidden. Sorry, the man said, letting me go. He came around in front of me, blocking my way. He was average height, youngish, white, with brown hair and a receding jaw. He wore gray pants, a white long sleeve shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a red tie. He smiled. You must not have heard me. Got your earbuds in? He still thought I was the mail clerk. What? Ah, no, sorry, I said, trying to cover my unease. Mine was somewhere else. Yeah, he said, totally get that. These late night shifts, man. I didn't think they ran mail overnight. I didn't know what to say to that, so I shrugged. Luckily, the guy didn't seem to really care. He was just making small talk. You got any of those inner office envelopes? He asked. He scanned my cart, spying the stack of them in the bottom basket, the stack hiding my pistol. Here we go, he said. He bent down to grab an envelope. I dropped down with him. I'll get one for you. I got it, he said. He put his hand in and fished around. I glanced up at the top of the elevator across the room, calculating how fast I could get there. Huh, what's this? He said. Run. I told myself, just run. The guy held up an envelope. Here's one with every line used up, he said. Never thought I'd see one, but I guess it has to happen sometime, right? Like Bigfoot sightings. Yeah, I said, sure. Just please, please, please let me go. Here, he said, giving me the envelope like there was some special ceremony for envelopes that had all the address lines used up. Then he put his hand back into the basket, looking for another envelope. Not again. I watched his hand, wishing it away from the gun. I'd hidden in there. He grabbed an envelope, and I sighed with relief until I saw the barrel of the gun sticking out from among the envelopes. The guy stayed where he was, stuffing a piece of paper he'd brought with him into the envelope. I stared at the barrel of the gun the entire time, waiting for him to see it while he was writing the recipient's name on the envelope. I had just decided to reach out and tug at one of the envelopes to cover the barrel when he finished and looked up at me. "There we go," he said, handing me the envelope. "You're good to go." "Thanks," I said. "Let me know if you run into Bigfoot, too," he said, and he disappeared back into his cubicle. I chucked the envelope he'd given me into the basket, covering the gun, and hustled for the elevators. I didn't care if anybody saw me moving fast. I wanted out of there. I got to the elevators without anybody else stopping to talk to me about Bigfoot, and I slapped the up button. The elevator dinged as it arrived on sublevel 14. Luckily, there was no one else inside. The other elevator arrived beside it with a ding, and I hurried into mine before whoever was getting out of the other one could see me. I mashed the ground floor button and punched the closed door button over and over again. The door slid closed just as another woman in a business suit walked past. I thought I saw her look inside, thought her eyes caught mine for a split second, but then the door was closed and the elevator was lifting me up to safety. For now. Chapter 39. I watched the red digital numbers on the elevator tick by slowly, excruciatingly slow. Sublevel 13, sublevel 12. Come on, come on, come on. This had to be the elevator I'd taken into the Department of Homeland Security building that first night, the one I could barely tell was moving. It was slower than watching a soccer game. The World Cup. Hagen had been so sure the target was a women's World Cup, but it couldn't be. Not the real target. I was sure of it. Darius was still in danger. The United States was still in danger, and if they weren't going to do anything about it, I was. Sublevel 11, sublevel 10. The elevator dinged and stopped. No, 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 no. The doors opened and an Asian man in a dark business slacks and white dress shirt and a dark tie got on. His ID badge glinting where it hung on his belt. I stared down at the mail cart, trying to be invisible as he punched the button for the floor he wanted. Did he know who I was? Did he know there was a prisoner on the loose in the building? If he recognized me, would he call security, try to grab me, and drag me back to my cell? My eyes went to the basket on the bottom of the cart. The gun was buried there. I wasn't going to shoot anyone. I already knew that, but you didn't have to shoot anyone to use it. Couldn't I just threaten him with it? Hold him off until we got to the top floor and then make a run for it when the doors opened? I could be out of the front door before he even called security. "How's it going?" the man asked. I jumped. He'd settled in beside me in the elevator, both of us facing the door, and we were already moving to sublevel 9. He looked at me. I was taking too long to answer. I had to do something, say something. "Good," I said at last, my voice croaking. "Smooth, Cameron, real smooth. Stare at the floor like a 5-year-old. Wait so long to respond to somebody saying, hey, that you draw attention to yourself, then sound as awkward and guilty as possible. James Bond, you're not." "Sorry," I said. "Long day." The guy nodded sympathetically. "Yeah, tell me about it." And that was it. Enough at last. To get him to stare at the elevator door again and forget all about me. Just be cool, Cameron. I told myself. You're the male guy. You look the part. Now act it. I never understood Julia's love of drama club and acting. It wasn't my thing. I mean, I went to all her plays and pretended to be interested, but before we dated, you couldn't have paid me to go see a play. Whenever they'd brought the whole school into the auditorium to watch whatever play the drama club was putting on that semester, I'd hunker down in my seat and close my eyes, grateful for the afternoon away from classes, but otherwise totally bored out of my mind. But now, suddenly, I had a real appreciation for what it took to get up on stage in front of other people and pretend to be someone you weren't. I was scared speechless. I wouldn't be surprised if my stinking, soaked armpits didn't give me away. Then on sublevel 8, the elevator dinged and the doors opened again. Chapter 40. A white woman in a gray pantsuit got on. Nodding to the other guy and me, she pushed a button. The elevator moved. I stared at my cart. The elevator dinged and stopped again. Seriously? It was nighttime. How many people were working late? Too many. A white guy in a suit got into the elevator, and I worked my way farther into the corner. At least now, there were so many of us, no one felt forced to talk. You know how it is. If there's just two of you, it's awkward not to say something. If the elevator's full of people, you can just pretend you're all alone, even if you're squeezed in like a package of peeps. Safety in numbers. Isn't that what they say? I was surrounded by people who might not recognize me, might bust me any second, but in a weird way, having more people in the elevator made me more invisible. The first guy to get to the elevator with me got out at sublevel 3, only 3 more floors to go. I took a deep breath and thought about what was going to come next. I'd wait for everybody else to get off the elevator and on the ground floor, and then I'd follow them out. Ditch the mail cart around a corner somewhere, slip outside, make a run for it. I wouldn't be in Arizona, I was sure of that, but hopefully I could find a way back, catch a ride with someone, beg money for a bus. I'd walk if I was close enough. But I couldn't worry about that now. Right now, I had to focus on just getting out the front door. The elevator dinged, and the little red number said we were on the ground floor at last. I played the part of the courteous mailroom guy holding the door open as the more important people left. That's when I saw the main floor beyond the elevator. Between me and the dark glass doors at the front of the building were perhaps a dozen people, most of them guards. Soldiers in black fatigues and helmets patrolled the lobby, automatic weapons in their hands, video cameras hung in the corners. The only way into the building was past the guards, working metal detectors and scanners, and the only way out was past another guard at the turnstile that only worked when you checked out with your ID card. This was no generic office building with an empty lobby and a single security guard watching basketball on his monitor. It was a heavily secured government facility, one I wasn't walking out of.